Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, everyone. Maverick family, welcome back. Lots to talk about tonight. In Canada, the Liberal NDP coalition government has tabled its new budget. Balanced budget? No way. Deficit spending? All the way. What else would you expect? 40 billion plus extra dollars, over $40 billion to go out, more than the government will take in any kind of revenue. Deficit spending. That's the order of the day. It has been for decades. So we'll talk about that. We have reaction. We have comments. We have the finance minister herself. We have the leader of the official opposition. We have the leader of the NDP. All coming up right here. Also later in the program, we have representatives from the organization United for East Palestine. Lori will be back. She'll be helping me host our special guests this evening for our feature interview. They will talk about their efforts to assist residents in East Palestine, Ohio, access testing, blood testing, to determine their level of exposure to the toxic chemicals that were spilled and subsequently set on fire to dispose of them following that train derailment last month in East Palestine, Ohio. So we will touch on all of that. We'll have other news of the day as well, including an update on what's happening with that grand jury looking into the possible indictment of Donald Trump. Don't go away. All that and more straight ahead.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, I'm back. So, what is this federal budget in Canada all about? Let's start there, because for our Canadian viewers, this is a big day. It also provides insight into the global economic conditions for all of our viewers outside of Canada, especially in the United States. And part of the overall budget strategy in Canada today is a response to the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States, which essentially opens up the purse strings and throws a lot of money at an inflation problem that was created by spending a lot of money, which boggles my mind. But here we are on this 28th day of March 2023. So in today's federal budget, it's projected to be a budget that will put Canadians another $40.1 billion into the financial hole. That's right, a $40.1 billion deficit, probably more. That's about $10 billion more than they were actually forecasting in last fall's economic forecast. So the Liberals, who are, of course, in charge with Justin Trudeau at the helm, say that it's all because of a slowing economy. And that tells you right there that they have a big problem on their hands, because by acknowledging that they have a slowing economy and also dealing with what is undeniable inflation, they're looking at a stagflation, which doesn't give them much room to maneuver. And it needs a very particular kind of economic solution, which they are not, in my opinion, offering up here today. So what they're doing is they're throwing money at certain segments of the population that they think either need assistance because of rising inflation, or to areas of the economy that they want to grow because they have specific kinds of things on their agenda. For instance, green technology initiatives. So they do have money earmarked for some of those kinds of projects. And we've seen the government come through with huge grants and incentives, financial incentives for automotive companies and manufacturers as they push the electric car initiative. So they are going to spend nearly $70 billion more between now and 2027, 2028, with almost $60 billion rolling out over the next 5 years. And yet, while they're doing all that, they're claiming that they'll be offsetting all of that with close to $25 billion in cuts and savings. That kind of language just defies logic to me. The reality is they're going into the hole. And so, yes, they may be cutting spending in some areas, but they're obviously increasing spending in others. So the end result is they're still spending far more money than they are going to be taking in. And that means that the overall debt will grow. Canadians in general, if you speak to them, don't really understand the difference between a deficit and the debt. They're two different things. The deficit is just the amount of money in this budget that is being spent in excess of revenue coming in. The overall debt is the total accumulated debt for the nation. So in this particular budget, 40.1 billion more will be spent than they take in revenue. So they titled this budget a Made in Canada plan. And even though it's forecasted 40.1 billion, it's actually closer, probably by the time they're done, to about $43 billion in this fiscal year that they will spend in excess when you look at the entire budget, which is over 200 pages long, 255 pages to be exact. They say that the deficit will gradually decline over the next 5 years, but will still sit at 14 billion in 2027 and 2028 if the Liberals survive that long, which I honestly doubt. I think between now and then we will have a change in government. Maybe sooner rather than later. So among some of the highlights from this budget, if you want to call them highlights, a $2.5 billion tax credit billed as a GST tax credit that they're calling a grocery rebate. They have $46.2 billion for federal, provincial, territorial health deals, $13 billion for expanding the federal dental plan. You can credit the NDP for that if you are happy about that. It was the NDP that pushed to have that implemented. And we have been seeing the tail wag the dog there because of the NDP coalition government with the Liberals. Without NDP support, the Liberal government would fall. They in the budget, they also have a 2% cap on incoming excise duty increase on alcohol. So if you go to the liquor store or the beer store, well, that's good news for you, I guess. Advancing passenger protections, but upping a traveler charge. They have $4.5 billion for 30% tax credit on clean tech manufacturing. So again, using a tax credit to further their green agenda. $15.4 billion in savings from public service spending cutbacks. So they're saying that Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister, deputy prime minister, said today in her address to Parliament, while outlining the budget plan, that they were trying to be careful about how they were implementing spending and were trying to avoid pulling back on services to Canadians, but clearly with $15.4 billion in service spending cutbacks, that will be felt. And so what they're really doing is shifting the spending away from actual services for Canadians to more of what you're just seeing right there, that I referred to just previously, the $4.5 billion in tax credits for clean tech manufacturing or grants for companies like Volkswagen to build that electric vehicle battery plant in St. Thomas. Make no mistake, those are all big budget items, right? Big spending, lots and lots of federal and provincial government involvement and financing to back up and incentivize the construction and rollout of those kinds of manufacturing facilities, especially in the automotive industry and in all of the manufacturing facilities that contribute to the supply chain for the auto industry in Canada. So those are some of the highlights, affordability and healthcare measures, also being highlighted through all of this. But it's that green economy, man, that's sucking up a lot of the money. So to push what they want on the green energy front, they have a refundable 15% clean electricity investment tax credit for investments in non-emitting electricity generation systems and electricity storage or transmission. That's going to cost $6.3 billion over 4 years. They have a refundable clean technology manufacturing tax credit, which is equal to 30% of the cost of investments in machinery used to manufacture or to process clean technologies. That will cost Canadians $4.5 billion over the next 5 years. And then a clean hydrogen investment tax credit. They talked about this back in 2022 during their fall update, and it will provide support ranging from 15 to 40% of eligible project costs, and at least $20 billion coming from the Canada Infrastructure Bank, which will support building major clean electricity and clean growth infrastructure projects. And not to forget about things related to social engineering. They have an additional $13.5 million, which will be spent over 5 years, and then $3.1 million in following years to see Public Safety Canada establish a National Counter-Foreign Interference Office. So that's to address the Chinese and possible other foreign country election meddling. And they're planning to spend $48.9 million on protecting diaspora communities, as well as Canadians from attempts by foreign states to interfere, threaten, and covertly influence individuals or institutions. Also, $13.8 million for the Department of Canadian Heritage to ensure that Canadian sporting institutions will be accountable for athletes' treatment, as well as to support a sports system that will promote well-being and safety. They're also rolling out an action plan to combat hate. That is coming with a $49.5 million increase to Public Safety Canada's coffers, which will allow it to expand its ability to respond to Canada's evolving security needs of certain communities. What else do I have down here? So yeah, like I say, they were saying that they are trying to reduce spending in certain areas to be fiscally responsible. But at the same time, they're actually increasing the overall spending. A lot of doublespeak coming from politicians, especially the Liberals. The country's overall debt, by the way, over the next 5 years will actually rise to $1.31 trillion. So you couple that with high interest rates, and the federal government is projected to pay $43.9 billion next year. $43.9 billion in the next fiscal year just to service Canada's debt. So you see, as this deficit spending continues year over year over year, and Canadians are put into more and more debt, as the country is facing more and more debt, it costs more every year to service that debt because of the interest payments. And as interest rates rise, we'll be on the hook for it. You know, you look back at what Justin Trudeau has said all through his reign of error, his reign as prime minister. And he always refers to deficit spending as investing in Canadians, investing in Canada. And because interest rates were low, artificially low, by the way, Trudeau and his coalition NDP Liberal government, they justified their deficit spending by saying now's the time to do it because interest rates are low. But now we're further and further in debt, and interest rates are rising. And because it hasn't been paid back, those higher interest rates are going to catch up with us. They are catching up with us right now. So time is coming. We're going to have to pay the piper. And every year it will become more, it'll eat up more and more, that interest, that it will eat up more and more of the budget, which means they'll tax you more and give you less. That's the way she works. Let's take a brief break. When we come back, we will hear from the finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, and we'll get the reaction from the opposition leaders. Don't go away.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back, and it's time to check in with the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland. Here she is. She's meeting with media following her outline of the federal budget here in Canada.
Avec ces solides facteurs économiques en toile de fond, le budget de 2023 arrive à un moment important pour le Canada. À court terme, il faut composer avec le ralentissement de l'économie mondiale, des taux d'intérêt élevés partout dans le monde et une inflation encore trop forte. In the months and years to come, we must seize the remarkable opportunities for Canada that are presented by two fundamental shifts in the global economy: the race to build the clean economies of the 21st century, and our allies' accelerating efforts to friendshore their economies by building their critical supply chains through democracies like our own. Our budget is a direct response to these essential challenges, and it will deliver new, targeted, temporary inflation relief for those who need it most, a stronger universal public health care system, including dental care for millions of Canadians, significant investments to build Canada's clean economy and create good middle-class careers, and a responsible fiscal plan that will see Canada maintain the lowest deficit and the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7. We have the remarkable good fortune to live in the greatest country in the world. Canada is filled with people who can do big things, and I have never been more optimistic about the future of our country than I am today. At a challenging time in a challenging world, there is no better place to be than Canada. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take your questions.
On a des questions, une question de suivi. We'll start on this side of the room. Puis,
Hi there, Dylan Robertson from the Canadian Press. Minister, you're planning to find $7 billion in government savings without affecting services to Canadians or transfers to provinces. So where else are these savings going to come from? And does that include layoffs or hiring freezes?
Thanks for the question, Dylan. No, it does not. Those savings will come from government operations. And I think that those savings are imminently attainable. I also think that it's the right thing to do because we needed in this budget to find a balance between continuing to invest in Canadians, to invest in affordability for Canadians who are feeling the pinch of inflation right now, to invest in healthcare, including a historic expansion of healthcare to include dental care, to invest in building the clean economy of the future and the jobs that go with it. And at the same time, it's really important for us to continue to be a fiscally responsible government, to maintain that AAA credit rating. And so finding that balance, I think, quite appropriately involves the government taking a look at how we do things ourselves and doing it a little more efficiently so that we can afford to continue to invest in Canadians.
And Minister, dental care was never part of your electoral platform, and now the startup costs and the ongoing spending are both higher than you had originally planned for. Why prioritize this massive spend on dental care instead of other priorities that you actually ran on?
I have to say, Dylan, I am really, really proud to be an MP in a governing party, to be a minister in a government that is expanding dental care to cover all Canadians. I remember as a kid growing up, you could tell whose parents didn't have a lot of money by the state of their smile. And I think that's a horrible thing. And so actually, I think it's really right and appropriate for dental care to, like all the other healthcare Canadians get, to be something that you get when you need it, not based on the size of your bank account.
Thanks, Dylan. Next question.
Les hauts fonctionnaires ce matin nous disaient que c'était un budget de choix. Malgré tout, vous avez plusieurs dizaines de milliards de dollars en nouvelles dépenses. Alors, peut-on vraiment parler de choix dans ce budget?
Absolument.
Pourquoi?
On a fait 3 grands choix. Investissement dans l'abordabilité pour les Canadiens, parce qu'ils en ont besoin aujourd'hui. Deuxièmement, les investissements dans la santé, incluant les soins dentaires. Et troisièmement, dans la création.
So let's pull out of Chrystia Freeland and get the reaction from Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the official opposition, Conservative Party of Canada. And here he is, Pierre Poilievre.
Aujourd'hui, la coalition coûteuse des libéraux et néo-démocrates ont attaqué les chèques de paie et les pensions des Canadiens, avec des dépenses qui équivaut à peu près 4 200 $ pour chaque famille canadienne. C'est des hausses de taxes, des hausses de d'impôts.
So I can tell you that the Conservatives not supporting this budget.
A demandé 3 choses.
They were looking for no new spending and no new taxes,
pour éliminer l'inflation, les
which they did not get.
pour que les Canadiens puissent ramener davantage chez eux.
Just one moment. Here we go.
This budget by the costly coalition of the NDP and Liberals is a full frontal attack on the paychecks of hardworking Canadians. It equals $4,200 per family in new government spending. That's more inflation, more taxes, and more costs for everyday people. There's no common sense. We asked for 3 things. The government should have brought home lower prices by eliminating inflationary deficits and carbon taxes, brought home powerful paychecks with lower taxes that reward hard work, and brought homes people could afford by getting rid of the government gatekeepers to speed up and lower the cost of building permits. Those are the 3 demands we put forward, and those 3 demands have not been met. This is an attack on the hardworking people of this country, and that is why Conservatives will be voting no. Instead, we will vote to bring home powerful paychecks, bring home lower costs, and bring homes that people can afford. It's common sense. Let's bring it home.
A big chunk of the money goes toward, obviously, dental coverage. This is not something that the government ran on as a mandate. What do you make of this, that, you know, a huge amount of taxpayers' money is going toward this initiative when they didn't run on this issue?
Well, they didn't run on any of this. They've once again broken their promises, and they've poured fuel on the inflationary fire. Low-income, working-class people will suffer the most as a result of this costly inflationary liberal deficit. Conservatives will fight once again to bring home lower prices by eliminating the inflationary carbon tax and deficits, bring home powerful paychecks by lowering taxes to reward hard work and bring homes people can afford by getting the gatekeepers out of the way to build millions of new residents affordable for our workers.
On sait que le gouvernement fédéral veut maintenant lier les mains des prochains gouvernements pour vous empêcher.
Impossible. Justin Trudeau veut forcer les contribuables de payer des grands montants, des milliards de dollars aux grandes entreprises multinationales si jamais un gouvernement futur réduit le coût de l'essence. Vraiment, c'est impossible. Un gouvernement Poilievre va réduire le coût de l'essence, de chauffage et de tout autre produit et on ne va jamais payer des pénalités aux grandes entreprises qui sont.
So you should think about that, folks. $4,200 for every family.
Why is it impossible for him to compensate companies?
Let's just follow how out of touch Justin Trudeau is. Justin Trudeau believes Canadian taxpayers should make multi-billion-dollar payments to powerful multinational corporations if ever a future government should reduce taxes on gas and home heating. That's what he believes. He believes the little old lady who can't heat her home and pay for her food should have to pay higher taxes to fund a multinational corporation if in any event, in any future scenario, we should lower taxes on energy. That is an outrageous attack on our working class. Another example of Justin Trudeau taking from the have-nots to give to the have-yots.
How much of this do you think is related to the NDP deal that they have, and what do you think of the NDP saying we're supporting this because we've got more media out there?
We have an NDP government that is running massive inflationary deficits, bankrupting households, keeping young people living in their parents' basements, forcing seniors to choose between heating and eating. There is literally only one party that is championing the hardworking people who contribute and make this country work. We, as Conservatives, will fight for a Canada that works for the people who work. It's common sense. We need to bring it home.
Le retour à l'équilibre budgétaire devrait se faire quand et de quelle manière?
Pardon?
Le retour à l'équilibre budgétaire devrait se faire quand et de quelle manière?
Mais tout d'abord, en arrêtant d'ajouter davantage de dettes.
You know, it's strange to sit here and listen to a Conservative leader be the champion of the working people. It was always the other way around till, well, maybe the last decade. The NDP, the Liberals, were supposed to be the parties that fought for the working class. And here we are with the Conservatives doing that. Conservatives were always supposed to be the party that supported big corporations, big business.
On foreign interference, there are a pair of measures in the budget to try and deal with this. More money from the RCMP to investigate and liaise with diaspora communities, and the creation of a new counter foreign interference office. Is that enough in your eyes? Would you like to see more? And specifically, what more would you like to see in the budget?
Well, it's not just more money. We need a prime minister who protects our democracy. This prime minister was aware that the dictatorship in Beijing was interfering in multiple elections to help him get elected, and he did exactly nothing. What we need is a prime minister who will bring home control of our democracy to this country. This country should control its own democracy, not Davos, not Beijing. No one outside of the walls of our country should determine what happens in our land, and I will stand up for our democracy.
I'm wondering if there's anything in this budget that you support, that you think will move Canada forward and will help Canadians when it comes to affordability?
No, there's nothing that will help with affordability. Everything in this budget will make it more expensive to eat, heat, and house yourself. But there is some positive proposals for First Nations. I'm glad that the government is plagiarizing, and I use the term favorably. My proposal to give First Nations more control over their money, their land, and their decision making. There's a whole section on that I think is very encouraging, and we want to build upon that.
What about protections for workers that are tied into tax credits?
Well, the Prime Minister wants to tax people's paychecks more. That's an attack on workers, not a benefit to workers. So we believe in lower taxes that reward hard work. There's a war on work in this country. Right now, you can lose as much as 89 cents for every extra dollar you earn. Losses that come through clawbacks and taxes. When you punish work, you get less work. A Polyev government will reform taxes and clawbacks so that people bring home more of each dollar they earn, and hard work pays off. Thank you very much.
Pierre Polyev. And to be fair, we better get Jagmeet Singh from the NDP in here too. We need to try to be balanced and fair, right? So here he is. Okay, hang on a second here while I get Jagmeet queued up. Here we go, Jagmeet Singh.
Tough thing. I could say I'm really proud that we were able to force this government to expand dental care. That's going to save money for families. That's going to mean that they're going to be able to take care of the teeth. It's the biggest expansion of our healthcare system in a generation. It's truly going to be life-changing, and it's something that we're really proud of. That's going to really help Canadians in a real concrete way. We're also proud that we forced this government to save people money, put more money back in their pockets with the GST rebate, which has been rebranded the grocery rebate. That's going to put money back in people's pockets. It's something that's going to make a difference in people's lives. And we're proud that we're able to do that. We're proud that we're, for the first time ever, able to connect government investments to good wages. That's never been there before, having those strings attached that we're going to give supports and incentives to tackle the climate crisis only if there's guarantees for good wages, good pay, and support for union jobs. That's something that's never been done before, and we're proud of that. We're also, on a number of areas, not satisfied that this government hasn't responded to the urgency of the housing crisis, that they haven't put in place changes to EI, given that we're up against a recession. So there's things that we're not satisfied by, but we're very proud of the work that we've been able to do.
So are you going to be supporting this budget is the big question.
Yes, we'll be supporting the budget. We're going to be supporting the expansion of dental care. We're going to be supporting giving people some money back in their pockets, helping them save money. We're going to be supporting the good wages tied to investments. We're going to be supporting the relief that Canadians deserve and that we force this government to deliver. Oui, on va appuyer ce budget parce qu'on a élargir les soins dentaires pour inclure nos aînés et les enfants de moins de 18 ans et les gens qui vivent avec un handicap. On a forcé le gouvernement de continuer de doubler le crédit de la TPS. Ça va mettre plus d'argent dans les poches des gens. Et on a, pour la première fois, lié les investissements dans les entreprises qui font face.
So Jagmeet Singh
Avec des bons salaires. Donc, c'est la première fois qu'on a
taking credit for the dental program that the federal government is rolling out. And it's true, it was the NDP that spearheaded that. And it's the NDP that forced the Liberal government to do that.
Le fait qu'on a forcé ce gouvernement de mettre le plus d'argent dans les poches des gens. On est fiers de tout ça. Mais en même temps, on n'est pas satisfait avec les manques des actions pour la crise du logement, les manques des actions pour améliorer l'assurance emploi. Donc, il y a des éléments où on n'est pas satisfait, mais on est fiers de ce qu'on a obtenu pour les gens.
Most of the initiatives, that were in agreement with the Liberals have been covered with the last two budgets. Where does this put you going forward in terms of leverage and supporting the Liberal government when most of the priorities have been introduced?
We're proud that we've been able to force this government to deliver things. And let me be very clear. There would not have been dental care in this budget but for New Democrats. There would not have been an expansion or a continuing of doubling the GST tax credit, which is the grocery rebate, but for the fact we forced this government to deliver that. There wouldn't have been connections. There wouldn't have been clear ties between good jobs and investments in companies that are fighting the climate crisis, but for New Democrats. So we forced the government to do this. There's a number of things that are still need to be done by the end of this year. We still need to see anti-SCAP legislation. We still need to see pharmacare legislation, and we're going to make sure this government delivers those things as well by the end of the year.
What about the lack of a mention of pharmacare in this budget? That's a big ask for your party. I know they have until the end of the year to produce legislation according to your deal, but they didn't even mention it in the budget.
Well, they do have until the end of the year. I want to be very clear. We expect that legislation to be tabled by the end of this year and passed by the end of this year. That's according to our agreement. We're going to force the government to do that. They have until the end of the year. We're going to make sure they do that. It's very important to us, and we're going to continue to put pressure on the government to deliver on that very fundamental commitment that we forced them to make in our agreement. But it's a fundamental commitment for Canadians who want to see pharmacare happen.
Can you renegotiate terms of the agreement with the Liberals since most of the stuff was completed? Can you, moving forward, come up with new priorities and support them to 2025?
So we have a number of things that are still outstanding that have to be done by the end of this year. We're going to continue to put pressure on the government to deliver on those things, and those things remain to be seen. So we'll continue to fight hard to make sure those are delivered, like pharmacare, like the anti-SCAP legislation. And there's additional things that we fought for. One example of that is the GST rebate. That was not in the agreement. We pushed hard to have it delivered last year, and we pushed again to have it delivered again this year. So that's an example of something that we've been able to push for something outside of the agreement.
Any concerns about the deficit forecast?
We are concerned about making sure we spend in a prudent way. And there's certain things that we can't afford to continue doing. We made it very clear we think it's irresponsible and something we can't continue to do to give billions of dollars to already profitable oil and gas companies. That's something we can't continue to do and we can't afford to do. We also can't continue to allow for tax loopholes that allow for billions of dollars of revenue to be lost so that we can't use that to invest properly in Canadians' programs that they need. So there's certain things that the government has to stop doing that are irresponsible and are wasteful. That we will continue to push for this government to stop doing.
Does the budget do enough to fight climate change?
I'd say sadly not enough, but the steps that are in the budget now are things that we force this government to do. It's the fact that for the first time we've made this strong connection. If we want to fight the climate crisis, we have to do that by creating good jobs and making sure people get good wages. We've done that in this budget. We forced this government to deliver on making sure there's strings attached. And I've been saying that for a while. We can't just give money away to incentivize the right decisions. We have to make sure that money is tied to guarantees for good wages and good jobs. And we've done that. So that's a positive step. There's still a lot more that needs to be done. This government's failed to meet any of their targets. They've got to take their targets seriously. We need to see real action to reduce emissions, and we'll continue to fight for that.
Will you trigger an election if the Liberals don't meet the funding by the end of the year?
That's not a decision we're making today, but we want to make it very clear that there are certain things that the government has to deliver by the end of this year. And the Pharmacare is one of those. We want to make sure that's absolutely delivered by the end of this year. In this budget, we have forced the government to deliver meaningful things that are going to make people's lives better, save people money, and help them with their healthcare needs, like their dental care needs. That's something that we're proud of, and we force the government to do that. There's more things that we're going to continue to force this government to do by the end of this year.
Is this the last Liberal budget you'll support?
That is not, again, the decision we're making today. We're going to continue to fight for people. And our goal, like I've said always, is to force this government to work for people. People sent us here in a minority government. We respect that. We've been using our power to deliver for people, to save people money, to give people a break. Unlike the other opposition leaders and other opposition parties that have done nothing concretely to help people in this unprecedented, challenging time, we have used our power as a fourth party to meaningfully make a difference in people's lives. We campaigned on dental care, we delivered. We campaigned on making sure people got respect, we delivered. We're going to continue to do that.
One issue you were pushing for was a national school lunch program to try and help with families struggling right now. It's not in the budget. I know provinces like BC are looking at a similar program, but what's your reaction to that, A? And then B, how realistic is that when education is a provincial priority?
I think it's a missed opportunity that the federal Liberal government did not move forward with a school lunch program. It's something that we can do. We can partner with provinces, have the funding to make a commitment to work with provinces to deliver this. Again, while certain areas are clearly provincial jurisdiction, that doesn't preclude the federal government from working together with provinces to deliver on things like childcare. That's something that is not necessarily a federal competence, but we actually used our power to force legislation to make that childcare agreement that the federal government was able to do permanent. We believe that's something that the federal government can do. We can work with provinces to deliver meaningful help to people. And that just because something is strictly a jurisdiction of the province doesn't mean we can't find a way to work with provinces to deliver that. And the school lunch program is an example of something that we can do if we work with the federal, at the provincial parties, provincial sections to work to make sure that's delivered. It can be done, it should be done, and we continue to believe that that's something that the government should have done in this budget, but it didn't.
A huge chunk of the new spending is for obviously dental care. Are you concerned at all that Canadians are going to be upset with the NDP over, this major spending that you did kind of hold over the Liberals to push through?
I think Canadians are going to see a savings that they're going to realize. I think they're going to be happy to see that on average families are going to save at least $1,200 per year. That's meaningful. We're going to save families another $500 up to $500 by putting more money back in their pockets with the GST doubling of the rebate. So these are concrete measures to save money for people. I think Canadians are going to be happy with that, and they're going to be happy knowing that they're going to be able to get their teeth fixed. That's something that Canadians are going to be happy with.
Last question.
Do you think that we'll ever see an excess profit tax under this government?
I'm concerned that so far the government has not really signaled an openness to doing that. And it's concerning because other countries around the world have acknowledged that that is a concrete way to tackle the greedy CEOs that are using inflation as cover to increase their profits. Other countries in Europe have put in place excess profit tax. We think that should happen here in Canada as well. It could happen with grocery store, massive corporate chains that are making record profits while charging record prices for Canadians. And so we still believe that that is the right thing to do. Excess profit tax can be put in place, and we'll continue to fight for that.
Thank you. Ask you on affordable housing. What would you like to see on affordable housing?
Thank you.
Okay, that wraps up our coverage of today's federal budget in Canada. Don't go away. More ahead right after this.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Before we move on, I just going to give you a reaction, an opinion, a perspective based on what I just looked at on social media. As when this show is on, I look all the time at social media feeds. I have people sending me information because I'm always trying to stay up to date, up to the minute on what's happening in the news cycle so that I can bring you the most recent factual information. And I just witnessed saw two things that just left me feeling empty, shocked, disgusted, discouraged, a little bit hopeless, honestly. I just watched a video on Twitter of some guy with no context given. I have no idea where it was, but some guy standing on a road where police, I don't think it was in Canada or the US, it must have been in another country because I did not recognize the uniforms. I'm not going to run this footage, but there had to be 1, 2, 3, 4, just maybe about 7 or 8 police officers, and then a couple more walk out. They're all armed, and there's this guy standing on the road. They're speaking to him, and then they shoot him. All of the officers open fire on this guy. So that was on Twitter. No context given. I have no idea why. And then I watched another video just a couple of minutes later, shared by a prominent Canadian politician. I won't say who. And I don't know where this was either because, again, no proper context given, no real detailed information. But some guy, and it appears to be a cafe, who is stabbed. Looks like in the stomach, blood pouring out all over the sidewalk in the blocked off area where the tables are set up, out on the sidewalk. It's like a sidewalk cafe. Well, somebody's walking up with a cell phone rolling. Nobody comes to help the person. Someone's yelling, call for help. And I'm just appalled. I don't know if that's news, but it's certainly the reality today. Posting the video, the politician makes comment on the state of our society today, but just by posting the video is also a statement on the state of today's society. It's shocking. Especially when I don't have enough information from the post to understand exactly what it's about. It almost seems like the post itself is gratuitous and in poor taste, unless I'm missing something. But without having a reason to post it other than for shock value, I don't know what the point of it is. Make a statement, yes. Share the information, sure. give people full perspective, let people draw their own conclusions, share information. But if you're going to post content like that, I would hope there's a real reason for it. And whatever that reason is, it should be conveyed. Why just post it unless you're just looking for clicks? Because it's gratuitous, sensationalistic. What is the point? If you don't provide a point, then it's just pointless violence. You're engaging in a violent act in yourself by posting the material without giving some information that helps people put it in perspective so that we can make changes to our society to prevent it from happening again or to try to make things better. I just don't understand. And then to comment about the deterioration of our communities, our society, because you're looking at this kind of activity, this sort of thing happening, and people not calling for help or not helping the person who's dying on the sidewalk, but then not providing proper information on your side either. Seems to me that's sort of part of the problem, isn't it? I guess I've just gone off on a I'm just taking you down a side road that I didn't expect to go down at all tonight. But when I see something like that, bam, bam, 2 in a row, death. You know, it was always a joke when I worked in mainstream media. Even when I was in journalism school, you know, there's an old line, if it bleeds, it leads. And it's true. The more sensationalistic the story, the more violent, the more you know you're going to build your ratings. And they put those stories right up front and center. They lead the newscasts. Always did, probably always will. Doesn't make it right. KGO television. ABC 7, Channel 7, San Francisco. Why do I mention that? It's stuck in my head. When I was in journalism school, there was a textbook on writing news for broadcast. And the author of the book made reference to an experience or maybe it wasn't the author, but there was someone quoted in the book who had worked at KGO, Channel 7, San Francisco. You know what KGO stands for or stood for back in those days? Kickers, Guts, and Orgasms. I suppose when you deal with tragedy day in, day out, as a lot of reporters do, as I did, you find a way to kind of block it out, just like a police officer or a paramedic or a firefighter. I think a lot of people, they get hardened over time from seeing those sorts of things, police officers included. Never really hardened me up. I think it made me a lot more vulnerable to it. I know it did. I guess that's why I'm sitting here talking about it right now. Bothers me. Don't like it. Don't like violence. It's so senseless. No need. Got to stop it, man. People being killed on buses, Toronto. People being stabbed in sidewalk cafes. I'll be quite frank, I have nightmares. I still think about a lot of the things I've seen over the years. A lot of bent sheet metal on the 401 and a lot of dead bodies. People don't realize how fragile those cars are. There's no roll cage in those things. Sheet metal, unibody construction, crumple zones, but beyond a certain speed, they just disintegrate. Head-on collisions, fires. Change the batteries in your smoke detectors, folks. Please. Take care of each other out there. I went to a car show. Got to be 10 years ago. Retired police officer, local cop, super nice guy. He had a little van that he'd done up it was like a little go-kart thing. He had a little red light on it and stuff, and he let kids ride around in it. He had a little mini, like an actual car that he did up like a police car too. It was so cute. And the back end flipped down, and you could put the go-kart right inside. I sat and talked to him for about, an hour. Just about his experience as a police officer. And so much pain. And he wasn't just outright crying, but the tears started to come out of his eyes that day. Because of all the calls he'd been to. He retired, but you just never forget. The suffering of just regular people trying to survive. It's the kids, too. They're the worst. It's the worst to see that. First assignment I ever had, man. Very first assignment television. Traffic accident. Right fresh out of school. T-top Camaro totaled. 2 people dead. I show up, and I'll never forget what was smeared on the windshield and the T-top roof, where the tops had been taken off. 70s Camaro. There's nothing to glorify about violence, man. Think twice before you start posting that stuff. If you're going to do it, make sure you do it for a reason. Not for clicks. Let's get back to reality. Sorry. Just I just worry where we're going. We're so desensitized. So damn desensitized. I don't even want to go back to Twitter now. I'm afraid to look. And you do get, I guess, desensitized to a point, but then it's only because it's all building up inside you, I guess that's the case for everybody. I covered a fire one time. poor part of town. I roll in there, camera guy with me. The firefighters are there. This house was still on fire. And they carried out 5 kids. 5 little tiny kids. And they laid them on the front lawn, covered up. One at a time. Sears into your brain, right? That stuff you just don't ever forget. And more. I can still smell the death sometimes. Change the batteries in your smoke detectors.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Lots of good people out there still trying to do good things to help other people. I will say that. Soup Mama. We're hoping to have Soup Mama on the show later this week. Here's some video of Soup Mama's latest delivery to East Palestine, Ohio. Aid for people who really need it following that train derailment and that final chloride spill, which was set on fire. Anyway, let's let a little of this video roll from Soup Mama. So I think this is the second load of aid that Soup Mama and her team has delivered to our East Palestine, Ohio residents. And I know that they're still looking for additional assistance. And just a minute, let's see if we can cue up a different section of the video here. Yep, hang on. We've got commentary coming up right here. Here we go. Yeah, we'll get commentary coming up right here. Still a lot of fear there. And of course, coming up in just a little while, we will have representatives from United for East Palestine joining us here on the program. Lori will be along as well to participate in that interview, our feature interview for tonight. And while we watch this roll, I'm just going to bring you up to date on the situation with Donald Trump. The grand jury is the grand jury vote not likely to happen until next week at the earliest. That grand jury continuing to weigh charges, possible charges against the former president in connection with the Manhattan District Attorney's probe into the 2016 hush payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. No current or former president has ever been indicted for criminal conduct. It would be a first, unprecedented.
So the last pair that was on eBay, no joke, sold for $1,000. I was like, well.
Apparently, the former publisher of the National Enquirer was seen leaving the district attorney's office.
All right, guys, I'm just going to check the comments here. Oh, man. Global issues. Yeah, absolutely.
So still no indictment, no arrest, no handcuffs, no padded cell for Donald
so far
Trump.
I'm doing all right, Jay. I'm gonna take this down off the tripod for a little bit. I got a chance to eat a little something, so I'm starting to feel a little better. I was getting a little peckish for a minute. Hang on. I still have this thing hooked to the battery pack, guys. So please bear with me. Yeah, I'm doing okay. Like I said, I feel a little better now that I ate something. I was starting to feel a little bit funny for a while. I definitely, like I said, the peppery taste it's pretty wicked today, actually. That's one thing I did notice. My breathing isn't so bad though. I can taste it. I can feel it a little bit in my throat now. So it is kind of like settling in after a while. Thanks, sweetheart. I'm not that tough. Well, at least I don't think so. But we're staying positive, you know. Like I said, it's not too bad today, though. It's not. I'm just thankful that it's not super windy, so there's not a lot of dust today. Like I said, we're not right next to those tracks like last time. So that is a huge bonus. Because it's, again, that was kicking up a lot of stuff too last time. So I really feel like the location change here being at the fire company, as far as health wise, it's a little bit easier than the last time. But again, I mean, you can still, like, if you breathe in real heavy, you can feel it like back here. Like you can feel it coming down the back of your throat. It sort of like burns a little, almost like a whiskey would or something when you do a shot. When you breathe in real deep and real heavy. So you kind of get that like burny feeling. I don't really know if I'm up or downwind. There's like really no wind today. So yesterday was so windy. I thought we were going to like blow off the highway. But today is just gorgeous. So I don't know. I mean, this is just, it's a beautiful day. And I am grateful for that. I'm grateful in some ways that it rained so that the dust is down a little bit. Thanks, Elaine. Listen, you did amazing with all those bears. And I just want to tell you, I got to see Agnes hand out a few of them, and that was awesome. So thank you to everybody that bid on the bears and then donated them back for the kids, because that was super cool to see. Thanks, Rajir. Yeah, we have, like I said, we have some more trucks on their way in. They should be here around 3:00. Silence equals complicity. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, it does. If you stand silent, you're just as bad as the people doing it. And I firmly believe that. That's how things like the Holocaust happened. People stood by and said nothing. They did nothing. So yeah, that sounds like a really cool shirt, Truth Warrior. You'll have to send me the link or something. That would be a cool one to add. Yeah, absolutely. It was absolutely great for the donation. And like I said, the bears are they're so cute and they're so amazing. And what's really cool is that with Agnes and I having bears of our own and they go all over the place, these kids will be able to go, oh, look at our bears. They're much the same. And, it'll be like a big family thing. At least I think so. I mean, if I was a kid, I would be totally into that, following bears around the world. I think that would be kind of cool. So, I think it's just an amazing thing that you do with them. I think they're absolutely spectacular. And coast to coast, girlfriend, you're not thinking big enough. We had Studo and Stu go visit Canada. So, you got to think internationally here. Dropping stuff out of my pockets. Sorry, guys. But yeah, internationally, honey, internationally. Your bears can be everywhere in the world. They are absolutely beautiful. But yeah, I say from sea to sea. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Like I said, I was really happy to be able to take them along with me when I went to Canada. So yeah, absolutely. Your bears are worldwide. They are seasoned travelers. And we need to get more bears out there traveling the world. Absolutely. I love the Freedom Bears. I think they're so great. And I think that every kid should have one. But yeah, so we're still, like I said, we're still waiting for some trucks. There's still people obviously coming in and getting donations here and there. So the big push for the morning is over at least. So that is a bonus. But we still have a ton of volunteers and a ton of products. So if you guys know anybody, Darlington, Negley, East Palestine, that need any kind of supplies, please send them down to the Negley Fire Hall. Because everybody is here waiting. And like I said, there are some more donations coming in a little bit. So that'll be really cool. But here, let me flip this around. You can see we got people tooling through the lines here. Yeah, I'm going to have to talk to Agnes about that. I'm kind of jelly. I want my name on the banner too. I like being part of Team Polish Agnes. But I've got one better on her though, and because I've got subscribers. And it's just one of those things. I'm sorry, couldn't help it. But no, yeah, Agnes's banner is amazing. You guys are awesome supporting her, and she's an amazing patriot, and I love her to death. So I'm super glad that we're all working together and trying to get stuff accomplished for everybody. You had to mail her a Visa card. Hey, whatever works, man. Whatever works. Every little bit helps. And as you can see, I see. All right. Well, we'll just have to see how that works. Oh, goodness. But yeah, no, I love working with Agnes. She is such a wonderful person. So, oh, yes, absolutely, Frank. We are making sure that all of us are staying as hydrated as possible, making sure we're taking our vitamins and everything. It is very important for anybody who plans on coming here or helping to volunteer that you take your personal health very, very seriously. Because it is not a joke. These are some serious chemicals and toxins that you are exposed to when you're in the area. So if any of you are planning on coming out at all ever to donate your time, just please make sure you're protecting yourself, because it is super important that you protect your own health so that you're able to be well enough to help others in the future too. So just something to keep in mind, because like I said, guys, it is a little rough out here. And even though I don't sound as bad as last time, there are still things I'm experiencing. And a lot of that stuff you're not going to pick up on a camera. Like I said, I can't, I can't put on a camera, I can't give you that sensation of your lips burning like you ate hot peppers. I can't give you that burny, metally, peppery, oily taste in your mouth. There's no real good explanation for it. Oh my gosh, Elaine, that would be something. A Soup Mama exclusive bear. Oh my gosh. I'm glad you enjoyed the soup, Jay. I was getting teased about that a lot when I was over at Belmore, because it had been a while, and there's another Jay out there, and he was all upset because the last time I was at Belmore at the railroad station, we did soup and he didn't get any. So this time I was able to, oh, sorry, that was the battery pack, remake. I was able to make some more soups, and he actually got some. So it was really cool. Thanks, Frank. Yeah, the hat was a gift from Reg. This thing is just, I love this. I'm not usually into the blingy hats, but God, I love this. And yeah, the nails, these are the craziest ones I've ever had. But for those of you that didn't see them yet, put them all together. I've got a beautiful eagle. It says America there. So they're just fun. But yeah, this was so far this has been an amazing day. Like I said, you can see everybody there behind me still working hard, but they're doing such a great job. And now we're gonna flip this around again so you guys can see what I'm seeing. There's Agnes over there hanging out, and that's Kayla, guys. And she is an amazing mom from East Palestine here. She has 3 children.
So that gives you a sense of what's been going on down there in East Palestine, Ohio. Scene of the train derailment.
Get the word out.
We will have
all kinds of news media. Really amazing young woman. Absolutely amazing.
Representatives from United for East Palestine,
because she is
joining us here on the program shortly.
That is for sure.
And this is Soup Mama
as you guys can see,
in action.
Cars coming in here,
you can find out more about Soup Mama and
wonderful stuff.
How you can help by going to soupmamaofficial.com. This is another load recently just delivered. A load of aid for the folks down there
Okay.
in Ohio, East Palestine.
So it looks like, guys, if we're looking here, so what diapers are left? They have size
Yeah,
ones.
so, you know,
And so it looks like
daily essentials
the
is
threes
essentially
and
what they're,
fours must
I
have
think,
been a
looking
real
for down
big hit
there.
with the size diapers.
Like diapers, of course.
3s, 4s, 6s, and 7s, guys. Oh, 5s too?
So lots
Okay,
going on down
3
there in
through
East
7.
Palestine,
Size
Ohio
diapers, 3 through
tonight.
7. We definitely need extras.
So
that's something to keep in mind for
let's
anybody.
wrap up with that. We'll take another brief break, and then I think what we'll do is we'll go to the phones briefly, and that will continue until we have our feature interview for the night on. So don't go away. I shall return right after this.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, I'm getting the phone lines set up. Here's the number to call.
Join the conversation. Call 1-833-975-3733. That's 1-833-975-FREE. Speak up. Speak out. Make your voice heard. Maverick News. Fighting for freedom by defending your right to free speech. Be a Maverick. Join us.
Okay, let me get the phone system configured here on the screen so everybody can see and so we can all hear. And there we go. So you can join the conversation at, let me put the phone number up on the screen as well. There it is, 1-833-975-3733, 1-833-975-3733 is the number to call to join the conversation. Exercise your right to free speech. Speak up, speak your mind, join the call. Also, if you're inclined, you can support the channel by liking, sharing, subscribing. Hit that like button. It really helps push us up in the search engine. Helps get the videos out there and around the YouTube suppression and censorship. Vitally important. And consider subscribing over on Rumble as well. We'd sure appreciate the support over there. Hang on a second here while I make sure that everything is properly set up. Be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So that previous footage from Soup Mama, kind of inspiring. I'm also told that Donald Trump is supposed to call Soup Mama sometime, I think tomorrow, discuss the situation in East Palestine. And of course, Trump went to East Palestine to visit following the derailment there. And it looked like because of his visit, Joe Biden's administration was sort of forced into action to take steps to support the people in East Palestine. So I have no calls in the queue, nothing at all, not even one. Which is okay. That's unusual. I don't think I've ever had that happen before. Maybe the phone system is not working. It looks like it's up and running, but no calls coming in, which is fine. So what I'll do is I'll just run another break. We're about a half an hour away from our featured guests joining us, but here you can look at this for a moment.
We are Mavericks. We say no to the Trudeau and Biden New World Order. And to bugs. Because bugs are creepy and gross. And people should not eat bugs. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Hey, no! To bugs!
Okay, I'm back and the calls are now stacked up. So you can join the conversation at 1-833-975-3733. Let's go to our first caller of the evening. Who do we have on the line?
Hey, Rick, it's Steve calling.
Hey, my man. How's it going?
Oh, not too bad. I didn't have a phone handy. I was playing in the background here and was looking for a phone, but sorry it took me so long.
Oh, well, thanks for calling. Saved the day.
So more of a question for you. It's not regarding any of the topics you've been covering, but I guess it looks like we're going to be feeling the pinch of CBDCs soon.
Mm-hmm.
And what are we going to do to get around it? Because I just can't see myself. I don't even have an email, to be honest. Like, I'm so tech illiterate. I don't think I could use one if I wanted to. And I don't want to. I don't want to know how to use them. Have you given that much thought?
I have me personally, I have, yeah. For me, I want to dip into both sides, right? I don't want to be dependent on the system and the digital central bank digital currency. I don't want to be dependent on that entirely, but I want to be able to dip into it. So I'll maintain ties over there. I have, for me, it's like try to live in both worlds. So you're not dependent on them, but you can be free over here. So you can get what you need by pulling in from there. So you have it, but you don't always use it. And then on the other side, I think we're going to have to resort to things like barter and maybe other forms of, money, maybe the creation of our own kind of money within the boundaries of the law, so they don't have an excuse to come and throw us in jail. But all money is a store of value. So when you and it's a universal means of exchange, so you need something to replace the cash if they take that out of circulation, whether it's silver or little pieces of gold or whatever it is. Promissory notes, IOUs, I don't know. It wouldn't, you couldn't issue your own legal tender, or the government would have legal justification to come and throw you in jail for counterfeiting, right? But there would be, we'll come up with other ways to exchange, trade, and the government will miss out because they'll actually end up with less tax revenue than they would have, depending on the size and scope, scale of people engaging in that kind of activity, but have to kind of revert to old school ways, barter, networking.
Right. Yep. Well, I guess some of the states, 3 of them, I think, well, one of them's Florida for sure. Idaho, I can't remember what the others were. It might be as many as 5 are doing legislation to avoid it, apparently. I know Ron DeSantis is working on it.
Yes.
And so I guess they'll end up with, well, in the United States, it would be state currencies. I know some communities have like their own tender for within the community. I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but you get your discounts and they'll have their own currency. It's only worth money there, but it's kind of to keep cash within it's like Canadian Tire money, more or less.
Yeah, that's right.
So, my concern is, well, again, being, of faith, one day if they start to push it too far, and it's not just digital, but, they say they're going to put it in my palm or in my forehead or something, that'll be the last of that for me, for sure. But
yes, yeah, I understand.
Quite often. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Do you think you could accept? Actually, you know what? Sorry, that's personal. I won't ask.
Would I let them chip me? Is that the question?
Yeah.
No.
Exactly. Yep.
No, I would not let them put a chip in me. No way.
Well, that's good. I've been having another thought. Excuse me. And it's around Bitcoin. And, people often say, well, you could use Bitcoin, stay out of CBDCs. I mean, I looked into Bitcoin a couple of times over the past decade or whatever, but it seemed pretty complicated the first couple of times I looked into it. I think the first time I looked into it, it was trading at 37 cents. So too bad I didn't stick with it a little more and could have been a Bitcoin millionaire by now. But I have a couple of concerns when it comes to Bitcoin. One is the halving. Somebody posted the halving schedule, and this is one of the things I said about that I didn't trust about Bitcoin. If a Bitcoin goes up to, I don't know, let's say $100,000, nobody can afford it, and they keep fracturing it. And I hadn't even thought about the halving, to be honest. But people said, well, you can buy portions of Bitcoins. And I mean, if you can buy a portion of a Bitcoin, especially if they're going to do halvings, I mean, you could end up with trillions of parts of Bitcoins. It'd be like $1. Like they inflate dollars into the positives, like 31 trillion printed dollars, let's say, versus with Bitcoin, if they had their 22 million and they just kept, making it smaller, but, a 100th of a Bitcoin starts out at $1 and eventually it becomes $50 for that 1/100th of a Bitcoin. It's the same thing. It's just going in the opposite direction. See what I'm saying?
I do.
There could be an endless supply of Bitcoin.
I've thought of that as well. And I've also looked at it from this perspective. It's like, yeah, they do cap the total number of Bitcoins that can ever be produced. And there are only so many that are produced, each year. So that's sort of a good thing, but you're right. They can fracture it and you can buy portions. So you can get inflationary pressures in that way. It's the same as printing more, just by adding more decimal points. But
Exactly.
the other thing that I've thought of is it's like even just the creation of additional cryptocurrencies.
Yep.
I'm not sure, but I mean, that in a way is inflationary as well. Because if you look at like Ethereum, it matches sort of the price of Bitcoin, and it's a competitive currency, I suppose. I don't know if the creation of other forms of crypto has an inflationary effect or not. I haven't looked closely enough at it, but I've wondered about it.
I've wondered that myself. One of the other things, I actually was thinking about writing a bit of a paper on this, and I write sometimes just, I think through things more thoroughly. But I don't think, some people suggest that to deal with Bitcoin, maybe they'll bring it into being a currency. So let's use the US as an example. If they brought Bitcoin and said, okay, to deal with Bitcoin, we're going to just accept it as American currency, it would be no different than counterfeiting all that as American currency. It would be a counterfeit. It'll always have to be a representation of something outside of the dollar. Because like El Salvador, I think they took it on as a currency. What you've just done is you've counterfeited your own money. Because all of a sudden, if you say it's equivalent to an El Salvador dollar or whatever, you just inflated your currency by the number of Bitcoin, because now, like, anyone can use that. Do you see where I'm going with that? Like,
yes,
so if there was,
unless you took the equivalent value out of the original currency out of circulation.
Exactly. But, with the US, I can't see them ever doing that, or anyone for that matter. But yeah, I think it would be equivalent to counterfeit. And I've often wondered if somebody will eventually make that mistake and get charged with counterfeiting because of that. But if it's always represented as, like, say, gold, you traded gold on the side,
you mean
it would be the same thing.
Could a country be accused of counterfeiting Bitcoin by adopting it as their native currency?
Not counterfeiting the Bitcoin, counterfeiting their own currency. But it would be like driving their own.
Except that a nation with the sovereign authority to issue its own currency would have the right to issue a currency in any form that it sees fit anyway.
But if you were a billionaire or a millionaire in that country, all of a sudden, all this currency of a different name, but same value, accepted the same way, floods into your country, you could upset some rich people. I would think that all of a sudden you just added tons of money into our economy. If it's at par, if it's considered equal to or the same. I think it could be a real problem is what I'm getting at.
Potentially, I suppose, but they generally would issue a notification in advance so that people with money who wanted to address that would have the opportunity to convert their currency into something else, or, prior to the implementation, I suppose. And if they did adopt Bitcoin, it would be done so at a time when the conversion, the currency to whatever form it is, the exchange rate would take effect. So anybody holding the original form of currency would be able to exchange it into Bitcoin or anything else at the time that they wanted to without fear of loss at that moment. So I don't think it would be an issue that way overall.
Doing it like that, I think there would still be an inflation problem. But like you had mentioned earlier, if you subtract out the amount of Bitcoin you're going to allow in, then you could balance it out on the balance sheet.
But I don't know that you can limit the amount of Bitcoin that would come into your economy if you're going to accept it instantly. You know, it becomes you can't control the flow of Bitcoin into your economy if you're going to allow it to come in. And in, you know, it's a universal globally accepted form of currency now. Anyway,
right?
Whether they adopt it as their native currency or not. In fact, I would say that probably by adopting it as a native currency, it just relieves the state of the burden of having to issue its own currency. And if they took their original currency out of circulation, just decommissioned it, then, but gave people the equivalent in Bitcoin for whatever, you know, in exchange for the original currency, then it would just be compensation in that regard. But I'm not sure exactly. I didn't really follow how those countries that have adopted it have done that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure either, and I didn't follow it. But I was just, when it came up, I was just saying, this was a couple of weeks ago, I was just trying to explain to somebody, you couldn't just say it's equivalent to, we were using America at the time. I said, it would be a counterfeit bill if it were considered equal to in all respects, or I mean, it would be disproportionate because it'd be a portion of a Bitcoin, but you couldn't just drop it into the economy and say it's you know, the same tender. It would always have to be something. It'd always have to be a Bitcoin. It couldn't be the American dollar bill. However, I hadn't thought about somebody like, and I don't want to say it, but like the UN or WEF or what's the big bank there? Not the Federal Reserve, the one above it.
The International Monetary Fund, or
that might be it. Where that Karsten guy worked, Augustine Karsten. Anyway, maybe if they took it on, it could be brought into all the. I actually wouldn't have to do that. Never mind, because it's already trading around. Personally, when I gave this thought, I always came back to it. Always have to be represented outside of the currency, much like any other form, whether it be a stock or whether it be a gold or a token, whatever. Well, it is a token. So I think it'll always have to remain outside the currency to be exchanged to and from a currency. I couldn't figure out a way to get it without getting rid of the original currency. So if you got rid of the US dollar completely and, like you said, decommission it, then you could bring it in and it could take over fully. But it had to do with Venezuela tried it, I think, El Salvador, or was it Brazil and El Salvador? But they didn't totally get rid of their currency. They just brought it in and made it acceptable currency, kind of like gold, tier 1.
Right.
Anyway, I don't know enough about exchanges and all that. I just think that you can't just represent exactly. It'll always have to be outside of the currency unless you decommission it. Anyway, maybe I shouldn't have brought it up. It was way off topic, and I just wanted your input.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting subject, and especially with the current state of the banking system, something we are all, I think, looking at to some degree. And I just, I think the whole Bitcoin thing is really interesting. I asked Kyle Kemper, Justin Trudeau's brother, to come back on the show to talk about it because he's something of a cryptocurrency expert. So I did send a message out to him. I don't know if he'll join us on the program again or not. We were very fortunate to have him join us one time on the show a year ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it was a great show. But I'd like to have him just to come on to just discuss crypto because he's very knowledgeable in that area, far more than me. And I'd like to get somebody on who's, a crypto expert who knows more about it than I do. I own a little bit of Bitcoin. I've just dabbled with it a little bit to try to learn about it. But the thing that I find with Bitcoin is it is not easily converted into goods and services. It's I suppose it could be, but because it's not so universally accepted, like I can't just walk into the local convenience store and just pay for a can of soda with Bitcoin. It's not that simple. In some larger centers, I guess there are places where you can do that, but they're just not set up around my community to accept Bitcoin. So, yeah, so as a universal means of exchange, it does seem to be lacking because it just hasn't been adopted. And the only thing that really supports Bitcoin's value is the public confidence in the currency. That's it. There's nothing else to back it up. If people lose confidence, then it crashes. And that's what the government wants. That's why you see Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau stand up and criticize it so harshly. They try to undermine the confidence that the public has in it so that it goes away.
You're right. He does that all the time. He's criticizing Bitcoin with Pierre.
Yep.
And him and Pierre, I mean, they can't get out 2 sentences without criticizing each other. And it drives me nuts. They're identifying themselves by what the other person is. And it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
They're both insecure.
Yes, I suppose so. Listen, we're going to move on. I got another caller on the queue, and we're just about ready for our guests to join us too. So we better get this call in. Thank you, Steve.
Excellent. Thanks. Have a good night.
You too. See you. Hello, is this Marina?
Hello, is this Marina? Oh, hi there, Rick. It is.
Hi, go ahead.
Oh, hi there, Rick. It is. Yeah, I think you might have answered all of my questions already.
You might want to turn your audio down because you have a delay and it's probably going to confuse you.
Okay. How's this? Is this better?
Yeah, that's better.
This should be better, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ahead.
Yeah, I had to walk into another room. Yes, I was calling in regarding what your concerns or thoughts were about what's going on about CBDC. The only reason why I'm asking is because I went to my bank a couple of days ago, which was TD, and I specifically asked the teller that I had got what, basically what's going on and when you guys going to phase in this thing. And he did not know a thing, nothing. He didn't even know what it was. So he called his manager, and the manager, she came over and she didn't know what was going on. They pulled up the website for Bank of Canada, and according to Bank of Canada website, they are not going to be implementing this until year 2024. Now, I don't know how if that is real or not, but that's what I was told. And I just basically wanted to know if anybody else, I wanted to know if anybody else had heard that. And I also got a notice today from Scotia saying they are totally going digital. By what, we're in May 1st or April 1st?
When you say that they're totally going digital by May.
Yes, no more cash.
May 1st of this year?
No more. Yes. And that is something that I got not even 24 hours ago. I mean, literally maybe 2 hours ago. A friend of mine had sent it to me. And it was a post or a poster or whatever on BC, or not BC, on Scotiabank's doors. And it was closed for the day. We are maneuvering or moving to digital currency. So they were closed for today. And he's on Vancouver. No, maybe he's in BC mainland. But yeah, he had sent it to me, and I said, no, that can't be right. But
I'm just looking online at their.
Okay.
Let me just see. I'll bring it up here on the screen so people can see as well. Okay.
Okay.
Because I don't think we should panic. Should never panic until it's too late. Then when it's too late, then we can panic.
That's what. Yeah, exactly. Until it's too late. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Let's see here.
And then the buying of silver and gold, and then what in the world do you do with it? Yeah, you can barter it, but seriously, when?
See, they've got all these changes for their fees, so they're making references to that. Who sent you this information about them going? But did you say by May? That's only a month away.
No. I said April 1.
No.
Like days. No,
I think I do see a reference here on Google to Scotiabank making references to certain branches going digital.
Fully digital.
Okay. So no question the banking industry is going through some real serious changes. My wife works at a bank. She's a business banker.
Oh.
She hasn't come home to tell me any of this. She works at CIBC. So I haven't heard anything about it. I think she would tell me if that were the case. Even if you go down to her branch in this small town that I live in, it's different in there than it was years ago because they have bank machines. They don't really have tellers in there anymore. They have offices for people who do the loans and provide other financial services when you sit down and talk to people, but they don't have tellers at her branch anymore. So it's technically kind of an all digital thing, but it has cash machines to ATMs that spit money out at you. So if you need to speak to someone, you have to go in and you have to stand there and someone has to come out and they actually greet you. It's a totally different deal.
Which is basically what, I went to my local TD just days ago.
Yeah.
Which is when I started to question them, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know anything." I thought, "Oh, okay, well, Murphy, you work at a bank. Do you not think that you should know it?"
Well, yeah, but
so I just took money out.
Yeah, but when you're a teller or you're just working, even if you're a bank manager, they don't tell you everything. The big picture of where the bank is going. I'm not seeing a single thing on their website addressing that rapid change. So my assessment is that that's not true. That you're still going to be able to get cash there on April 1st, and certainly by May.
Good. Yeah.
And if the federal government, if it says on the federal government website that they're not going to adopt CBDC until what you said 2024, so we're at least a year away from that, and it's going to take time for the banks to roll it out, whatever they do. So it's not here yet. There's still some time.
Would you not consider that if somebody had a lot of money in the bank and they did that, would you not consider that a form of theft?
In what sense? They lose no value just because they convert to a digital form. You would get the equivalent value for whatever cash you hold.
Okay, but if you don't want to go digital,
then you
would
even
have a choice.
Well, if the government chooses not to issue paper or physical currency or fiat currency and they go entirely digital, there's nothing you can do about it other than to convert your currency into an alternative form of currency, a different fiat currency or gold or silver or some other store of value. You always have that option. You have the freedom to do that. There's nothing that forces you to hold Canadian dollars, either a tangible fiat or digital fiat. Nothing compels you to. You can switch it to anything you want.
No. Yeah. Okay. No, I wanted your opinion.
Or Bitcoin for that matter. You could convert it to Bitcoin if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, that would be something I would have to learn all over again.
Yeah,
I'll stick with dollars.
The biggest thing is no matter what you do, if you're exchanging anything online in any form of digital currency, they can track you. even Bitcoin. I mean, I'm just not convinced that that's entirely anonymous either. And you saw that during the trucker convoy, because they can use court orders to compel you to turn over your key to your wallet and things of that nature, right? So big issues, certainly something we should be looking at, and we'll have a further discussion on it at a later time. And we'll bring in somebody who's a lot smarter and more knowledgeable than I am. But we should wrap up the call because I see that our guests for the evening have arrived. But thank you for the call. Appreciate it.
Well, okay. You're welcome. Thank you, Rick.
I'd see you. Take care.
Okay.
All right, let's take a brief break. We'll be right back because our guests have arrived. Don't go away.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, I'm here. Lori's here. Let me get that evened out there.
Hi,
There
Mr.
she is.
Walker.
Hello.
How's it
brought
going,
some-
my friend?
It's going okay. How's it going with you?
Well, I was listening to you earlier, and you were telling some stories about your days as a cub reporter.
Oh, yeah.
And boy, that took me right back to 35 years ago when I was a cub reporter starting out. And when you're young, they always give you those really gruesome and tough assignments like disasters, tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, car crashes, murder cases. I worked the court beat, the police beat, the fire beat. And man, I'm still dealing with that trauma 35 years later. You never forget those things when you cover them. And man, you got me. You got me in the feels when you were talking about that. It really, really took me back. And it got me thinking about this East Palestine disaster that you're covering today. And I feel for the reporters there locally who've had to cover this and whatever they may have been exposed to just in the course of doing their job.
That's right.
You know?
Yes. Yeah.
They live there too. They're residents too.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And you brought along a couple of guests with you tonight.
I sure did. I think they're here. We got Jenna and Alex. Hey, guys.
Hello. So you guys are with United for East Palestine.
That's right.
Can you tell
I
us
just want to give you a chance to introduce yourselves to our Maverick News audience. Alex, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, Lori. Thanks for having
Hello.
us on. My name is Alex. I'm the executive director for United for East Palestine. I got involved with the organization when I met the founders, Jenna and Emily, from their Facebook group page they created for United, was called United for East Palestine. I got involved with them because I have some experience with sort of organizing. I'm a solidarity member with United for Railroad Workers United. So I get their newsletter. So I found out about. I'm getting some feedback. Someone's.
Yeah, I hear some
Yeah.
noise in the background.
Some
Not
kids
sure where.
or something.
Sounds like kids playing. Glad somebody's having fun.
Lori, there we go. Okay. So where was I? All right. So so I found out about this story pretty early on, and so I reached out to the Facebook group because I was interested in maybe helping to try and form or operate some sort of mutual aid network to get resources into East Palestine and get people out. Just be in the early days of what had happened, and due to that, myself, Emily, Jenna, and then later on Aaron, Professor Welton, Dr. Galam, we started forming a sort of team to get the proper response to this, as we saw that as things went out, the response was just so inadequate. I live in Las Vegas, but I've been doing a lot of the sort of online email sending and stuff to try and coordinate things. And I'll pass it to Jenna.
Yeah, so I'm Jenna Giannis. I am one of the founders of the Facebook group United for East Palestine. And Alex is correct. We started more of like a mutual aid kind of thing. We knew people were displaced. We wanted to get them resources. And then as the story unfolded, we learned that it was much more than just getting some displaced people, some needs to get them by. The story, it came to what was in those trains, what was lit on fire, what was left, and what was happening with people once they returned back to their homes after they were told everything was safe. And so then we had an opportunity to continue our reach to bring some of the resources, because they were still definitely necessary. People weren't trusting drinking their water, so bringing in truckloads of water was still important. But in the same breath, it was really important to bring in some independent scientists that didn't have affiliation with Norfolk Southern or the EPA. And so that's where our mission has kind of turned to, is how can we provide the residents real answers with real scientists, not just our own, and figure out why they're getting sick when they're still being told that everything is fine and safe.
And you actually live there, correct? You live in East Palestine?
I don't live in East Palestine, but I am about 12 miles outside, so a neighboring community. So not far, and according to some of the research we've done, not free of whatever has been put into the air and and traveled, probably, it definitely traveled over top of us. So
it depends on which way the wind is blowing, I guess, on any given day, and which way the water's flowing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we actually have.
Sorry, go ahead.
We actually have some pretty good models based on wind direction, where and the plume size that show us a pretty good idea of where the particulate dispersion spread to. Also based on empirical accounts, pictures, videos people took, whether from Kentucky or anecdotal accounts from New York, Connecticut, Ontario, Canada. We have a pretty good idea of how far this spread and where it spread to, and it's a very large area. Basically, Kentucky up to south Kentucky, north to Ontario, Canada, east to as far as Maine.
Wow. Ontario, Canada. Rick lives in Ontario.
I do, but
Rick.
Well, that's
Okay?
not unexpected, because over here we get a lot of the effluent even from like energy plants and things like that from the Ohio area, just because of the prevailing winds, right? So that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, there was a little bit of research done that because of how the wind was going that day, had they have held off until that had passed, the outcome might have been a little bit different, just from like how far it was spread. But we had some, and Alex knows the more scientific terms, but the way that the wind was like shifted completely different than normal. And that's what caused it to stay low and not disperse up into the sky. So
I see. Do you have any idea what I guess the further it disperses, the lighter the concentrations would potentially be? Do you have any sense of what the concentrations would be in any given area, or is it too early to figure that out at this point?
We have some models. Were you saying, Jenna?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think nobody wants to do that research, but I'll let Alex share what he has.
Yeah, no, that was good. Yeah, we have some models, but they're all kind of amateur. We don't have any. We have yet to find a professional meteorologist to help us put together a proper model. But what we do know is that we have TikTok videos from Ontario, Canada, showing snowmelt within the exact time frame that is the same chemical sheen that we see in the rivers and creeks around East Palestine. We have accounts from people in the mountains in Ontario, Canada, talking about the snow melt and clearly showing that the snow melt is melting at freezing and turning into gas at just as soon as it hits 0 degrees Celsius. There's snow melt that's melting and then gassing at 0 degrees Celsius, which obviously shouldn't happen if it's water. So we don't know the exact chemical concentrations, but we have a lot of empirical evidence. This is why we need to get testing done, because if we don't get the testing done, it's all gonna evaporate, melt, disperse into the atmosphere, disperse in people's rivers and creeks. But it's definitely enough based on the empirical evidence we have for it to be a major cause of concern.
When you say empirical evidence, what do you mean by empirical? Because that sounds like TikTok videos sound like anecdotal evidence to me.
Well, anecdotal evidence would be if it were one account, but empirical evidence is experiential. So because it's video, because we can see it on video, and because we can track it by date, we know that where its date is, we know, and we also have the high split, which is a very sophisticated scientific modeling system that we plug certain variables into that shows what the plume went, which correlates to the video evidence we have people all over Ontario, Canada, showing the chemical sheen coming from the snow melt. We also have people taking pictures of the snow in Ontario, Canada, and showing how it's melting, showing that it's forming black spots when it reforms, which water shouldn't do. So we have actually a fairly consistent amount of empirical data. What we don't have is objective scientific analysis of that data.
What parts of Ontario are you talking about?
The mountains. We're looking at it's a peninsula, but the peninsula surrounding close to Niagara Falls, and then the Great Lakes as well.
Mountains in Ontario?
Yeah.
That might be the mountains in upstate New York.
Yeah, those mountains near there. Yeah.
Not too many mountains in Ontario.
She described it as. Hold on, let me look. I have the person from there.
Maybe in sort of like the Hamilton Niagara escarpment.
Yeah, that's what she said. Niagara. I didn't want to use the wrong word. I know she said Niagara, but I didn't want to use. From my knowledge, that's all considered part of Ontario, but I don't know Canadian geography very well.
Yeah, that's okay. I get the idea.
I barely know American geography, so.
In my travels across Canada, I seem to recall that Ontario was pretty flat. It was pretty flat land.
Yeah, pretty much. You get
Parts
around
of it.
Niagara Falls, though, because of all the erosion,
Yeah.
right in the Niagara Falls area, you get cliffs and things like that, but not quite mountains. You have to get to the other side of the country to get real mountains, like out in BC.
She described them as mountains. I don't know. She said she lives in the mountains.
But that would be a long way for that plume to travel.
I got the idea. I got the idea. Yeah, so I guess that's sort of the problem, though, right? Is the government would need to cough up some money, or Norfolk Southern or somebody, to do wider studies to determine the level of exposure and the concentrations, which are really critical, right, in various areas, but very hard to track that. And because it's dispersed over such a huge area now, you'd have to do a lot of testing, which would cost an immense amount of money.
Exactly.
And cross border into another country.
That's
if
true.
It's in Canada too. It's
Well,
not
why
just
would they
across-
do that if they say it's okay right where it happened? So,
Right.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. It wouldn't align with the narrative that we're pushing out there.
What are they? I don't understand for the life of me. I don't know why the heck they set that stuff on fire. They said it was to prevent an explosion, but it just, even that defies logic. Do you guys have any idea, or has anyone provided any explanation?
We've seen a lot of explanation as to why it shouldn't have been set on fire, and the logic behind why it wouldn't have exploded based upon what was inside of those. My understanding as to why it was set on fire is because they said if they didn't do a controlled burn, there was a chance that it would just explode, and they were concerned with how much like shrapnel and stuff would come from an actual explosion. So
Holy God. Wow.
So that was the reason why it was one train car that was at risk, and they lit 5 on fire. I think 4 of them had vinyl chloride in them, and 1 had like frozen vegetables. So, but they lit them all on fire, and that is not determined. They do. If you watch any of like the Senate hearing with Alan Shaw, that's the CEO of Norfolk Southern, he says that that was the fire chief that chose to set it on fire.
Insane.
That just seems crazy to me.
Someone should be sued over that.
Someone should go to prison over that.
Yeah, I think that's criminal.
It is. Poisoning people is a felony. Aggravated arson is also a felony. There was no reason to set, even by their own argument, that even if they say there was a reason to set one car on fire, there was absolutely no reason to set all the other tens of thousands of tons of toxic chemicals and other particulate on fire, creating like this toxic chemical.
Talk about making a disaster worse. I mean,
Yeah.
it just made the situation 100 times worse by setting it on fire.
Oh, yeah.
And there was no, even according to their own SOP, there was no reason to. Like, we look into like what they say how you should handle toxic chloride is the opposite of what they did. So there was no rhyme or reason behind it.
The only
other
reason
than
I
maybe
can come up with is what's the cheapest way for us to get rid of this crap?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's burn it.
Yeah.
And who cares? And who cares? Because this is a small town. Nobody's going to care. We'll be able to burn it, build our tracks, and keep going. And that's essentially what the plan was. The only reason, I think it was maybe 3 days they had evacuated the people. And I've learned since you can't run a train through an evacuated town. So every day that we're not running a train probably costs some money. We're losing money from Norfolk Southern. So they told everybody it was okay to come back. There was lots of oil spilled into the ground. They rebuilt tracks, told everybody they could go home. And I mean, while people were pulling back into their driveways, trains were going down, across the tracks, and they let whatever oils and stuff just go into the ground. And at the beginning of March, they finally started to dig it up. But when they started to dig it up, it started to smell really bad all over again. And so that's where we're at right now.
So I guess you're helping people access testing, blood tests, things like that. Is that part of what you're doing?
It's part of what we're trying to do, yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I was going to say we're working on connecting different scientists, or doctors that have some experience in these different avenues where we don't have experience in. So really just meeting some different people. If Dr. Galome from where's San Diego, the University of San Diego. She's been helping. She studied some of the Gulf War illness. I think Agent Orange was pretty much something that they had talked about during that. So she's familiar with the long-term and short-term effects of it. Agent Orange is also something that's would be in East Palestine right now, based upon the burn that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And
so by
help me
burning
understand.
it.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead,
Go
Lori.
ahead.
No,
Ray.
you go. No, it's your. I insist.
No, you.
Please.
No, you.
All right, Alex, go. Just kidding.
I wanted to clarify the reason that you guys are trying to help people get their blood work done is because, if I understand correctly, the local labs there say that they don't offer the specific test anymore that these people need. And all those labs are owned by the train company. Is that correct?
They, yeah, the two labs that are in available, Quest Diagnostics is one, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head, but they do all, BlackRock is one of their biggest shareholders. And so the test was available, and then it became removed from the system somehow.
Wow. Okay.
So some people, I guess, have already experienced illness as a result of this. What are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, this week we have people whose children have blood coming out of their ears, a lot of bloody noses, rashes, gastrointestinal pneumonias, migraines, just a lot of symptoms aligned with chemical exposure, whether it's like tingling, mouth, lips, teeth. There was like a peaceful protest. And like I said, I live 12 miles away. I don't frequent the area, especially now. But I went, there was a peaceful protest that some of the residents held this past Saturday. And there's a park there, a park that's having an Easter egg hunt in a week and a half, by the way. But at the park, there is a body of water. I'm not sure which stream or creek it is. I'm not sure of the name. And they're aerating this creek. And we had walked past it. I was in town for about an hour and a half. By the time I got home, I was so lightheaded. I had a horrible headache, and my lips and teeth were tingling in a way that I had never felt before. And it was just, I mean, I wasn't even there that long, but people are expected to go back home and live there. So it's crazy.
Yeah, we rolled some video earlier of Soup Mama. She's done a charity mission there where they're bringing in truckloads of supplies. And I think she's been there a couple of days this time. And, she said, even though it's a beautiful day and there isn't much wind today, she said yesterday was very windy. And she's been complaining of sore throat, burning in the throat and the sinuses. And she described it as kind of a peppery taste in her mouth. Are you hearing about that a lot?
A lot of people say it's like a chemical taste that they'll taste. But yeah, weird tastes come up quite a bit. I don't know if I'm missing any symptoms, but I mean, there's a large variety of them. The bloody noses was really common early on, and now there's some commonality with the blood coming out of ears. So there's definitely something going on that would lead anybody to believe that it wasn't safe.
Yeah,
I have to ask
it's
because
so much
I'm
more than just not safe.
sorry, go ahead.
It's so much more than just not safe. These are chemicals that if a state were to use them on purpose, it would be a war crime against if they were to use them purposely against civilians. This is a level of toxic chemical poisoning that is so far beyond the pale. And the problem is, there are a lot of problems, but one of the big issues is that the EPA is fully aware of this. They are fully aware of how toxic these chemicals can be and are choosing not to give a full spectrum test to find out exactly what they're pumping in to the air, and are purposely choosing to obfuscate and tell people that it's fine when they know for a fact that it isn't, because as long as they do, there's no state of emergency, and as long as there's no state of emergency, people don't have to be evacuated, and as long as people don't have to be evacuated, they don't have to pay for all of what comes after getting people evacuated and taking care of their financial, making them whole, and all the stuff that would come out of Norfolk Southern's pocket, Medicare, medical care, all of these things. So what they are doing is tantamount to a deliberate attack against the people of the United States by Norfolk Southern and protected by the United States government.
And we all remember, after 9/11, 20 years ago or 21 years ago, the EPA told the residents of Lower Manhattan that the air quality is fine. Come on back to your apartments. And we've seen how many people have become sick and died, unfortunately, of various cancers in the years since. So, yeah, does anybody really trust the EPA after that? And you can see on the ground what's actually happening in and around East Palestine. And as this plume travels further and further afield, You're seeing people getting sick in other states and even in other countries up there in Canada. So I have to ask, because I'm an animal lover, I've heard a lot of reports of people's pets dropping dead or developing illnesses after the train derailment. What kind of reports are you hearing about that?
We've seen, I actually have a friend, her son has a fox rescue. He lost one of his foxes right after the derailment. He's had a couple that were sick, multiple other animals that are showing different side effects. I've seen cats, dogs, chickens, rabbits, all sorts of animals that have fallen sick. It's really hard to diagnose an animal with chemical exposure is what it seems to be the problem. The other part is just how much aquatic life was destroyed through the water. I think Alex has the specific numbers, but there's two like rivers, or not rivers, but creeks that go through the village, and they have 0 aquatic species in them, completely gone, like hundreds of thousands of dead animals, like fish, frogs, all sorts, dead deer that are like dropping dead right next to these bodies of water as well. And
Yeah.
I mean, if you know how the circle of life works, normally, an animal dies, another one comes and eats it. These ones aren't even being eaten by other animals. So that kind of tells a story in itself as well.
Alex, can you tell us a little bit more about how it's affected the aquatic life?
Yeah, it's on the level, and this is not an exaggeration. It's a mass extinction that's taking place in around the vicinity of East Palestine and the rivers. We're talking about over 40,000 just the animals in the rivers and lakes: frogs, fish, krill, or shellfish, everything dead. Deer lying down dead by the dozens next to the rivers. Birds falling dead out of the sky. The beehive, and their beekeepers reporting entire hives by every single one of them dead. This is a level of destruction and destruction to life and complex life and animal life that is outside the scale of anything I have ever seen or ever seen reported. We're looking at the type of extinction event that hasn't happened in the continental United States, at least since Columbus got here. Like, this is a level of overall death of so many different species that it's hard to describe how destructive this is. Foxes are dying. Liver fail. We have dogs in Ontario, Canada. People reporting their dogs are going into liver failure. We don't know how far this is stretching, or what the long-term impacts are going to be. We don't know what's going to happen as this all goes into the Great Lakes. If we're talking about dioxins, we don't know how far those have spread. These things, dioxin lasts as long as plastics. So we're talking 2 billion a billion year half-life for these chemicals, and that they build up inside the tissue of human beings. They spread to our children. They turn women infertile. They cause massive birth defects. We're looking at some of these chemicals, even at the safe levels, if they accumulate inside the liver, like 100% cancer rate in mice. We don't even know how toxic they are to humans. Really, these are chemicals that are so toxic. And those are just the individual chemicals. We have no idea what the long-term impact of being exposed to this cacophony of chemicals all at one time, over time, for a long period of time, is going to do to this area, to the people in it, and to the biosphere surrounding it. And there isn't any testing being done to find out.
So those are pretty broad, sweeping, scary statements. So that we don't scare the living pants off everybody, in the world, can you give me some sense of, or maybe you can't, a geographic area where that level of concern would actually be warranted?
It would be. We haven't done testing. We need to do testing. That's the thing. There needs to be testing to be done to figure out what levels have went and where. We need to know what chemicals exactly were put into the air, because we know what was in the cars, but when you set something on fire, it causes chemical reactions. And when you set things on fire with other things, those things react. It's impossible to predict exactly what chemicals were created in what amounts. We can only measure them after the fact, but they're not being measured. In fact, the EPA is doing everything they can to prevent them being measured so that they can disperse and break down until it's impossible to really know exactly what people were being exposed to. So the only way we have models that I can share where we have kind of general ideas, but they're not done. We don't have any. We haven't been able to connect with a professional scientific meteorologist to really give us a real precise idea of where exactly this plume went. We don't have the personnel and the funding yet to actually get people on site where people are taking pictures of the same chemical particulate coming down in their rain and covering their cars. We haven't been able to get those tested. There's so much sampling and testing needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, but I understand. My concern here as a journalist is proper perspective. I want to deal in facts. I don't want to fearmonger. I don't want to scare people unnecessarily. I want to give people real information, right? So I do see a lot of stuff on social media, and I've seen pictures of like cars with like dirt spots all over them and people posting it saying, see, this is from East Palestine. Well, they can't. I don't know that that's necessarily true. It looks like dirt crap all over your car, man. Like, how do you know that's because of what happened, 1,500 kilometers over there, and it came down as rain on your car? Well, how do you know that's from East Palestine? But they post it on social media as though that's what it is, with no testing from them. And so that concerns me, because I see a lot of scared people. And I see a lot of people using this honestly as sensationalistic clickbait online. No doubt in my mind about it, which is not right either, because it's also a question. It's also an issue of people's mental health. And I've been seeing this issue used by people inappropriately in order to generate clicks for their social media platforms. And that's not good for people either. So I'm looking for real balance here, right? And I don't want to just sit here tonight and scare the crap out of people. So if we're going to make, broad sweeping statements about contamination continent wide or whatever it is, then I want some scientific data to back that up. Because we have people in our chat right now, I'm certain, who are scared to death and believe that there's a mass level extinction of humanity going on continent wide as a result of these 5 rail cars. And that's not actually true either. That's why I'm asking, and maybe we do need more testing, but we need to know what the concentrations are in specific areas, where the effluent actually drifted over what geographic area. And there certainly would be meteorological reports from that time period that would be able to tell you where the wind was carrying the effluent, so you could track it and then do testing along those paths. So certainly we need that. But I've been seeing stuff like the Mississippi River is completely contaminated and everybody is going to die. It's just a World Economic Forum plan to exterminate humanity. That's not really true either. So we need real perspective, because some people are weak-minded and they will pick up on these social media posts and believe anything that anybody says, as long as it scares the living daylights out of them. So I want to be very careful and responsible about what we are doing here tonight, because physical health is important, but so too is mental health. And the only way to make sure that people find the right path forward is through truth. And that means we need real data and real empirical evidence to back that up, and real testing and real scientific evidence. That's the only way we can really deal with this. So I'll throw it back to you guys, because I know you're on the ground and you are, you're there, you're trying to do the right things, but I'm hoping that we can give people real solid information so that we can find the right path forward tonight and find ways.
And that's
to
what
help
you're
the
trying
people
to
most
do. I mean, you're trying to get us that data right now. That's what your efforts have all been about. We all want the truth, and we don't want to engage in, speculation or fiction. And I know that you don't have the data yet that you need, that we need.
Right.
And a lot of these reports are going to be anecdotal. and it's hard to tell the real ones from the fake ones on social media. Have you had yourselves, have you seen reports that you personally question and think that might be fakes?
So if I could just quickly say, I 100% agree with with everything you just said in terms of needing to get empirical data. That's our main goal, is to try and get the testing done so that we can get real, objective scientific analysis to show what's going on. That's why we're working with Purdue University, Professor Welton's team. That's why we're working with Dr. Galam, her team, the Galam Research Institute. These are highly respected medical researcher, she is a highly respected medical researcher, Purdue, highly respected university and they have all the testing we need to figure out what's going on. But just to give a little perspective, when I say like the chemical particulate coming down in rain, I'm not talking about people randomly from 1,500 miles away. We know people on the ground right next to East Palestine as this was happening, taking video, showing the rain, showing the smear it left on their windows, and showing exactly what it looked like the next day as it dried. So we know this is a thing that happened, and we can track that there are clear correlations between that happening and the exact same type of dust appearing in the exact same way in Kentucky. So while we do not have while we are still working on getting the objective analysis necessary to see what's actually happening, there is a large amount of empirical data that makes it clear that we need to get that testing done.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I was going to say is we need people to be aware that this has happened. I think that's part of the problem. Is there are people, when you mention East Palestine, that still don't know what that is, and we need people to say, "I want testing," and stand up for it, because like it needs to happen. And I think everybody needs to have real answers based upon their geographic location as to, if this stuff traveled there, and then what can we do about it? And where is the accountability for just lighting a bunch of stuff on fire?
Right. So you said that you did have some good models, right? So you must have had weather reports from that time period to show where the winds were carrying the effluent. Is that what you have?
We have a high split projection. It's plugged in to show dispersion for particulate, but the problem is it's showed for like a general sense of like general particulate. We would need to plug in the data for exactly what chemicals we're looking for to get a better idea of how they would actually disperse, because obviously some things weigh more than others, some things behave differently in the winds than others based on their chemical composition, whether they cling to water or not, what type of chemicals they are, whether they're lighter or heavier. These are all data points that we would need to plug in, but we would need to have a greater comprehension of what chemicals were being released, and the only way that we can do that is to get the testing done to figure out what chemicals are in the snow melt that we're seeing the chemical sheen in, what chemicals are. We need a full spectrum analysis of the chemicals that have been as they have been dispersed, and then we can then backtrack that to figure out what that chemical cloud might have looked like to get a better, more solid model for how dispersion would have happened.
And when you set something like vinyl chloride on fire, depending on the temperature that the fire reaches, it will create a wide range of different toxins, chemicals, dioxins. I don't know if it would actually even create polychlorinated biphenyls or not, but certainly a range of different dioxins, possibly including PCBs. Am I correct in that?
Certainly, especially if you burn it with like frozen vegetables, which is just carbon, like it was. Even just if you burn, just for instance, the paint on the train cars, we know that creates a certain level of dioxins. So we know the dioxins are created. We actually have data now showing that there is dioxins in the soil around East Palestine. But there's so many other, like acrylate, there's so many other chemicals that were created, many of which have already dispersed into the rivers and creeks, into the air. People are breathing it in. So we actually don't know. We might never know at this point the full spectrum of chemicals that were released into the plume, how far it went. But the sooner we can get actual testing and data, the sooner we can really get a solid picture of what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and a chemical like that, if you ignite it at a high enough temperature, you can actually, destroy a lot of those toxins at the source of ignition. But when you just burn it in an open pit like that, there's no way to take it to the necessary temperatures to do that. So you're going to get all kinds of crazy byproducts that are toxic coming off and then being carried into the atmosphere. But I would imagine that the area of greatest concern and the highest concentrations have to be right there at the source, and then in the prevailing area, like even where you live, Jenna, at 12 miles away. That's got to be a really serious concern there. It's in that general vicinity that the concentrations are probably highest.
You would think I lived in a different country based upon how little my local area cares about the situation from a testing standpoint. It took weeks for I have city water, so it took a couple weeks for the water department to even email us and say, hey, we've been testing your water, it's okay, because we switched our whole family to bottled water. But as far as we can't even get testing done correctly in the immediate area, and I am not the immediate or the first priority, which is completely understandable, but there's not even a timeline for if and when that will ever happen unless I'm to pay for it myself.
Now, what's the waters? What are the main water sources for drinking water in the communities in East Palestine and in the communities surrounding it?
It's a probably almost a 50-50 split between well and city water. Their city water is getting tested, I think, once a week is what our governor has said. We're testing it once a week. Wells, there's a huge waiting list to get your well tested unless you find somebody to come and test it for you. The problem with the wells is that they're going to need ongoing testing. If it comes up clean today, that doesn't mean in 2 weeks it's going to be the same story, because we know this stuff absorbs into the soil and has to disperse itself over to the wells. And so we're starting to see a little bit of well testing come back. Some of it is good, some of it's concerning from I think acrylates are being found in some of the water, which I don't know that they even shared that was part of the original concern.
Right.
But yeah, it's a very working class community. And so the ability to just get up and leave, everything you worked your whole life for is not realistic. I don't know that that's really realistic anywhere else in the country either, but it's definitely not a reality in that situation. And so, or paying to get your well tested every week, even that's not a reality for a lot of people. That's expensive. And so the fact that some people haven't even had initial well testing yet, and we're still waiting in line to get that test. Soil testing, I don't think we've gotten any of it back unless it was done independently. So EPA, am I still correct in that, Alex? EPA hasn't released any soil testing yet.
They released some of the testing that they did around the dump that they were taking, but they used levels of acceptability for dioxins that were for if it's in a dump, but they were the test is what they sampling for this test the soil they did that they're for the cleanup.
Now in the East Palestine area, orchards are one of the main agricultural activities, right? Am I correct in that? That's what I read.
I wouldn't say there's a bunch of orchards, no, but it is a big agricultural community where, they depend on the land to grow crops, raise animals. A lot of, that's where my favorite little produce stand I go to is right outside of East Palestine. So I think as we get into the season where we can harvest crops, it's going to be detrimental to that community, because just the stigma behind it without having any of the answers, people aren't going to go there and buy things. And to be honest, I'm not going to. I told somebody they should just mail order their produce from another country at this point, but I don't know if that's the solve either. But
Yeah,
But
well,
yeah,
the values of the farmland, the property values there, all of that is affected. Are people experiencing that? Are you seeing like even housing
oh yeah,
prices?
the property values have already plummeted. There's people, they were like, they can't sell their houses. That's one of the requests they have from Norfolk is to buy them out of their house at the pre value, so they can just recoup what they've lost, and start over somewhere else. But that isn't an option. Which you can evacuate for a couple weeks and stay in a hotel while they're digging up whatever they left in the ground to just sit for a month. But at the end of it, you're coming back unless you've chosen to maybe file bankruptcy on your house or, just those are options. They're
What
at
has
your
the
own risk.
investigation shown at this point in terms of the cause of the derailment? Was it something dealing to do with brakes or the tracks? Do we know?
It was.
Go ahead, Jenna.
Yeah, I was going to say something was on fire. From my understanding, some sort of wheel apparatus was on fire miles out. So 20, 30 miles out, Ring cameras caught this train on fire. Authorities had been called multiple times across on its journey to East Palestine, where it ultimately derailed. So there's definitely some negligence from the railroad department, or not department, the company, from just not stopping it right when it was initially on fire and just letting it go. And there are things on the wheels that like tell you how, like, what the temperature is. There's things on the track that do all of these things, and they're doing an investigation. So I forget, NTSB or something is doing an investigation, and they've released some preliminary results, but they said the whole investigation will take, months, of course.
And I guess there's just ongoing concerns about deteriorating rail infrastructure, aging technology and hardware on the trains themselves, the condition of the tracks, all of these things, and even possible shortcuts being taken in terms of safety, right?
That's really the main concern is shortcuts. The aging technology, I feel, based on the evidence, is a distraction that certain people with political affiliation wanted to use to shift the blame. The fundamental issue is maintenance. That's what the real cause of that wheel bearing setting on fire is. They were not doing the maintenance necessary to prevent that from happening.
Right.
And that is that's because they are doing everything to cut costs, and so they are keeping their number of employees as low as possible. And because of that, things like this are happening. Derailments are happening on a massive scale and are continuing to happen. Meanwhile, the profits for the railroad companies are at record highs. And the reason this is so egregious is that it doesn't matter what side of the political divide or political ideology you personally affiliate yourself with, whether you consider yourself a conservative or a liberal or a socialist or a libertarian. It doesn't really matter. We can all agree that human beings require unpolluted water, air that is not polluted, and soil that is not polluted. Those are three things we can all agree are necessary for our society to function, or to be even a functional society. So if we can agree on those things, then we can agree that we need to take the steps necessary to prevent those from happening. And one thing we need to do is fix our rail system, because our rail system is so broken, and the fact that the government has become so corrupt that its primary function in all of this is to run cover for Norfolk Southern, and they're poisoning people on a mass scale. And I know that you do not want to scare people, and neither do I, but in disaster response, you are supposed to assume the worst possible case scenario, prove that is not the case first, and then figure out what actually needs to happen. Your response in any disaster should be prepare for the worst possible outcome, and then find out what actually is happening. The worst possible outcome is, I mean, it's possible that the plume, most of the toxic chemicals stayed around East Palestine, and this is a largely contained event, even though we have considerable amount of evidence that they're certainly not completely contained. But there is another possibility where certain chemicals stayed low because of their molecular density, but other chemicals went higher. So it could be that there's some chemicals that moved all the way to Ontario, Canada, that came down in the snowmelt that are different chemicals from the ones that are in East Palestine, because lighter chemicals will go higher and heavier chemicals will go lower. So it could be two entirely distinct chemical disasters that are being exposed to almost the exact same levels of concentration over the same sort of area, but in different places. And we don't know, because we aren't getting testing. We don't know exactly if people's cars were covered in a thick chemical paste, because we didn't do the basic due diligence of collecting the samples and finding out. These are very basic levels of disaster mitigation that should be done, and which the government should be doing but isn't. And that's a problem, because it shows that if this is, suppose, just for sake of argument, this were the worst case scenario, we would be reacting to it in the worst possible way that you could react to it.
Well, you're back, Lori.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you're still out of
I don't know
sync.
if you guys have noticed, there's a strange internet problem on my end today. Ever since that tornado that we had, our internet's just been all buggy. So
See, I thought you were
apologize
just
for that.
playing ventriloquist.
It
Talking
looks
without
funny,
moving
doesn't
your
it?
lips.
Yeah, I know. I can't seem to do anything about it, guys. Sorry, I tried.
That's okay. No problem.
But I was offline for a few minutes and I missed that part of the conversation. So I'm a little lost as to where we are.
Well, we're right here, and we were just kind of rehashing the whole, where did the effluent go, and why we need real testing over a wide geographic area to determine the level of risk for people, and the government isn't providing
And I
that.
did want to follow up and ask, have you had any success so far in getting this testing done for individuals, getting individual blood work done? Can you hear me? Are you still here?
Yeah, I heard you. I'll answer. So, Jenna, you want to go?
Go ahead. I couldn't hear the question. I think my internet caught Lori's internet's disease.
Oh, no.
Just to reiterate the question, Lori, you were asking how much success we've had in getting people blood tested, right?
Yes. And what the results have been, if you can share some of that information.
So there have been individuals who have been able to pay to get blood panels done, but they were only able to test for specific chemicals. What we need to do is get blood panels testing for literally everything, because we don't know what they were exposed to, because we don't have that information. So we need to find out what chemicals they're being exposed to. The only way we can find that out is to test their blood, because they're being exposed, test for literally everything, and see what you find. And then once we have a data group of people and we see consistent chemicals being found at elevated levels inside this control group, then we know that those are the chemicals we need to be testing for, and then we know what chemicals we need to look for and what amounts. And that is what we're working with Professor Galam from University of California, San Diego on trying to do. We're working on getting some phlebotomists out to get those blood samples so we can get those tests done as soon as possible, hopefully by the end of next week.
Well, my concern is the cost, because I have a chronic illness. I have long COVID, and I have to get blood work done all the time. Those broad spectrum tests are so expensive out of pocket if you don't have insurance, if you're not covered, or if your insurance won't cover it. So I would think if Norfolk Southern isn't paying for it and the government isn't paying for it, and these labs are not willing to do the work pro bono for scientific purposes, then that comes back to the individual to have to pay for it. How the heck are people able to pay for this? This is not a rich folks area. These are working people. How the heck are they paying for it?
they're not going to be able to. And that's where some of the work that we're doing comes into play. I know somebody I just posted yesterday or the day before. I was out of power for like 3 or 4 days, three days, I think, because we got the windstorms here in Ohio, so I had no power. I'm a little bit behind on my facts, but somebody posted the cost of the dioxin testing is anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 just for the first test. And the one problem with some of the blood tests is you needed to have your blood tested before this to see where you were, because
Right.
everybody's
Get your
going to have a little
benchmark.
bit. Yeah, everybody's going to have some dioxins present in their blood. It comes off of like any normal like bonfire or, a gas grill. I think like all of that produces dioxins. And so the fact that a benchmark is missing could also skew some of those results. But I think like Alex had said, finding, what's prominently in everybody's blood work, where are the consistencies, and kind of go from there. But it is hard because we don't even know which ones to test for.
Right.
And that's why we have the Independent Science Fund that we're trying to raise money for, because Dr. Galam and Professor Welton have already gone into their own their team's funding to get a lot of these tests done. Professor Welton and his team, for instance, are $25,000 in the hole, probably more by now.
Easily.
Yeah, probably close to like 50,000 now since they've come back. After one weekend, they were $25,000 in the hole just on getting the first round of like 14 houses tested. And there's still a vast amount of testing that needs to be done. That's just for the chemical and soil. Now we're trying to get blood testing done. All of that's going to cost money. They're looking for grants, but this is going to cost.
That takes time, though.
Yeah, and what we need to do. So our trajectory is we get the testing done to prove there is a problem, to prove irrefutably that there is a problem. We know that there's a problem because we can see it, but we need to get scientific data and the numbers to prove objectively that there's a problem. And then once we can do that, hopefully we can then pressure the government to activate the already existing mechanisms to pay for the vast spectrum of testing that needs to be done to people, to give people. There is a clause already to give everybody impacted by this area free Medicare for life, which can be activated.
I think they're going to need it.
At any day. Literally, Joe Biden just needs to sign it, and by executive order, that law has already been passed. The president can offer people Medicare for life when it comes to emergencies from disasters like this. So that can happen. But what we need to do is to get enough data to have the support for pressuring the government to put these mechanisms into place.
And so my follow-up to that would be, have you had any help at all from your elected representatives in Congress or in the State House?
We've had some contact with some people, but nothing concrete enough that we can say their names.
Just wondered if you were getting any help at all from Washington. Wasn't expecting
not
it.
the way it should be. By any means. We've gotten mentioned a couple times in some, different congressional conversations, but I think there's a lot of work to be done from that perspective. We've been working on, trying to get people to write letters, send emails, make phone calls, be as loud as we can. Everybody's voice is matters in this. If you're from California, wherever you're from, like, call, demand testing, demand answers, because it isn't fair to scare people without the truth, but it's also not fair to not tell people that there's a problem. And so how do we get to somewhere where it's accurate, real information where people can actually make their own judgment on the situation and what they need to do, whether, to take care of their families. And that's the problem, is people don't have that information that they need, whether they're, right here in East Palestine or they're, somewhere where the plume flew across, right? Nobody has that information. And so the way that the testing's been done right now, it's all been a guess. They choose what they want to test for. And we've learned that through other people coming in and testing for everything to narrow it down. Like we do a kitchen sink test, we figure out what's coming positive, and those are the things we're going to test everybody for. And that's where the inconsistencies come in, is I can run a test for like all sorts of things, but if it's not the right thing, we're not going to get the right answer. And so if we're really selective about what we test for, we're going to get really selective answers. And that's not the truth either.
And that's another concern I have is, even if, let's say, Joe Biden found it in his heart to issue an executive order saying that the residents of East Palestine will get, Medicare for life. How does that help the people outside of East Palestine if you don't live in that area covered by, President Biden's executive order? What about the people in other states? What about the people in Canada who are being affected by this? If you just localize it to that one region, there's going to be a lot of people left out in the cold who have been affected. So that's my concern.
That's exactly the right concern, Lori. That is, I think, the summation of the goal of what they are trying to do is to minimize this to the smallest area possible, make it just East Palestine, which toxic plume clouds don't listen to municipal county lines. The United States government has the capacity, if to take this seriously and to address this on the level that it needs to be addressed to. Just for example,
that's right.
When people were posting all these videos about the chemical sheen in Ontario, Canada, it was on the cusp of going viral on TikTok until it got suppressed, and the Canadian government put out an official statement saying that they had spoken to the EPA. There was no connection to the chemical sheen and the burnout in East Palestine. They weren't going to do any tests. There was nothing to see here, and anyone saying anything different was disinformation. So if the United States government has the ability to get Canada to, in complete dereliction of their duty to the people that live in Canada, to just do the basic testing necessary to find out what this chemical is all about, especially when there is direct correlative link to a gigantic plume of toxic chemicals right across the lake in East Palestine, Ohio, and then subsequent gigantic amounts of chemical sheen coming from the snow melt in the runoff all over Ontario, Canada, then basic just making sure would be, okay, well, let's at least do testing, but they wouldn't do any testing. They refused to do testing. They just said, it isn't there. Anyone who tells you anything different is lying to you. And we're also going to suppress all the information that would tell you otherwise on social media. And because the EPA told them to do so. So if the United States government were to take the other tack and decide to take this seriously, decide to do the testing, decide to prove scientifically that their claims that everything was okay was actually true or not, because that's how science works. You try to disprove something. So if you think there's possibility there's a problem, then you have to prove not that there isn't, but you have to try to disprove that there is. And in trying to do that, you have to actually test. And they're not doing any of those testing. They're just saying that there is, everything's fine, while not doing any of those tests. And I'm never count on any. I hope no one ever counts on any politician ever doing anything out of what they feel in their heart or out of the goodness of their heart. That's not how people think. Their entire analysis is what is good for their own political futures and the political futures of their allies. So the only way that we get the government to do anything is by pressuring them and by making it politically toxic not to.
Well, yeah. And, Donald Trump came there, made an appearance. Tulsi Gabbard, some other politicians have come and done a photo op, but has that really helped you?
It kept the news here for a couple days. But aside from that, no.
Right. I see
Yeah.
a lot of virtue signaling and people out there, politicians, pretending to care, but they really don't. And I'd like to know, where are the environmental organizations, the big ones? Where's Greenpeace on this? Have they shown up? I mean, Aaron Brockovich came to town, which was great. But where are they? This is an environmental disaster. Where are the environmental groups?
I think there is a bit of a concern with a lot of groups by not wanting to come in and feel like they're telling people who are living there what they need to do. We have decided to try and take some steps to bring in larger other organizations um, who just have general shared interests in trying to address issues like this, whether that be people who are interested in updating our transportation system, or people who are interested in making the environment cleaner and safer, or people who are interested in government accountability or corporate accountability. This is just one particular instance that kind of blew up in terms of literally and also in terms of figuratively, into how people became aware of it. But it's just one zit in the oily face of the slow and not so slow destruction and decay of our society. And the only way that we can fix that is by actually addressing the underlying causes. And I think that we can do that, but we have to work together. And I think that we are going to need help, but it's also important that we've first had time, that the people on the ground have first had time to organize and figure out what they want to see happen, so that we can figure out how to collectively work together to improve things.
And when you talk about underlying causes, I mean, we've seen just in the last few days 3 more train derailments, right? There was North Dakota, there was that one in California, there was one near Chicago. The underlying causes, what caused that train to go off the rails in the first place?
Yeah, we have statistically 3 trains per day derail in the U.S. And so, yeah, like I know there's a lot more car accidents per day, but how many airplanes crash a day in the U.S.?
Great point.
Why is the train, the railroad infrastructure, the only mass transportation that isn't regulated by the government?
It's supposed
try
to
to
be.
Try to get on an airplane, or anything. The regulations are just wild, but a train, anything goes. Just put one person on a 20-mile long train and have fun.
And it's on our, it's on our rail lines that they ship the most toxic and dangerous of chemicals, more than in semi trucks. The really dangerous stuff does travel by rail. And we've had 2 administrations now in a row promise to upgrade our infrastructure, repair our infrastructure. Donald Trump promised it, didn't do it. Joe Biden just passed a huge infrastructure bill last year, and what do you know? We got more train derailments than ever.
Yeah, the infrastructure bill totally ignored trains. It didn't even address railways, because railways aren't addressed by the United States government. And also, to that point, the reason why trains are used to ship toxic chemicals is because railroads are objectively the safest and most efficient form of travel for people and product that exists to our current technological capacity. Safer than trains, safer than trucks, more efficient than any other form of land travel. The problem is they have been deregulated to the point that these rail companies are doing everything they can to maximize and centralize all of the profit into the smallest group of hands possible. And so to do that, they have kept the number of employees and workers of these trains as low as possible. Some of these trains are 2 and 3 miles long and have 2 to 3 people on them. There used to be, you had to have people sitting who were there literally just to sit and watch for things like burning train parts that can notify the conductor this is happening to stop the train. There used to be you had to have a certain level of maintenance, but all of that costs money. The maintenance on these trains, it's not like they talk about updating the infrastructure, but they don't want to talk about actually passing the regulation and working with workers, working with the people who actually know how to run trains safely, and asking them what needs to happen, and working with the working class to actually create an infrastructure that works for everyone, that keeps us safe, and where the economic benefits of these rails are actually enjoyed by the people who keep the trains running. Is an organization like Railroad Workers United has a step-by-step clear plan for how to make trains safe, how to make them effective, how to update our railroad infrastructure so that our railroads are no longer a national embarrassment compared to literally every other industrialized country in the world. And we can do that, but the problem is, in order to do that, we have to address it from the perspective of what is actually good for our society. What is the macro benefit to having functional, safe, efficient railways where the people who work, who actually make them run, are well paid, have vacation time, and able to live respectable, enjoyable lives while having enough staff to make sure that things like this don't happen. And the only way we're going to do that is if we address this from the perspective of what's good for all of us, instead of just letting these gigantic billion-dollar corporations control our collective destiny.
And, I wanted to ask about this because I'm a little unclear. Maybe you can help me out here. Who's responsible for track maintenance there in that area? Is that Norfolk Southern that owns that particular section of track? Are they responsible for the maintenance? Is the government responsible? Who maintains the track itself?
Well, I will say that the government doesn't own the railroad, but that specific track, I don't have that answer. I don't want to make something up. I do know that Norfolk is. Right? It might be. I do know Norfolk dug it up and rebuilt it. So I don't know if that says anything about the situation. I imagine
that would tend to indicate that that's probably their track.
Yeah, it's all privately owned. Like that's the problem, is we have these railroads that are an infrastructure by the government's own admission. Our entire society is totally reliant upon these railroads functioning, but they are privately owned. And by privately owned, when we say these massive corporations control them, what I mean is the very small group of people at the very top who control and are concentrating the economic benefits of these railroads. That's who actually makes the decisions about the railroads, in terms of people who are actually working, who are actually performing the work to keep these railroads going, who are needed to keep these railroads running safely. Those people are being stepped on. For just case in point, literally 6 months ago, 3 months ago, Joe Biden forced the end of a railroad labor strike that probably would have mitigated this. Maybe not if they had just gotten that one demand, it's like more sick days. And like that, isn't that so sad that
it is?
Like they were ready to strike just for like the basic dignity of having a few days of sick leave. Never mind they're already being worked to the bone. Never mind there are already over 1,000 train derailments every single year almost. Like we are talking about a level of structural decay to our transportation system, which is just absolutely embarrassing and totally unnecessary, while these rail companies take in record profits, because that's their only concern is to concentrate their wealth in the smallest hands possible. And by doing that, that means cutting the working class out and stepping on the working class, who are then impacted by things like giant plumes of toxic gas being put into the atmosphere.
I'm curious if you happen to know, does Norfolk Southern have a large number of employees who live in East Palestine or around that area? Are they residents of that area?
The only people that work, I think, for Norfolk Southern that live in that area, if any, they would be working for like the assistance center right now, and they would be newer employees. But I don't think they're local members of the community now.
I see. Because I wonder about the employees' safety at Norfolk Southern and how they're taking care of their people. These are the people that have to go replace the track, be in direct contact with the soil where this thing happened. Those who had to, I guess, set that controlled burn. I kind of wonder how they're doing and how or if the company is taking care of their own employees too. If they care that little about the residents of the community, then they probably don't care as much about their own people, their own employees.
Professor Welton, just to put an exclamation on what you just said, wrote Congress and sent a letter that he had sent to OSHA because the workers who are being tasked with cleaning up all these toxic chemicals have no idea what chemicals they're being exposed to. They are not being provided hazmat materials. There is no protective gear.
What?
Yeah, these people are being they are throwing at like these. That's what I'm saying when I say like there is so little concern for the working class by the people making these decisions, and there's no expectation that anyone's even going to hold them accountable because the government has become so corrupt that the EPA, their actual function in all of this has been the direct opposite of what the EPA was supposed to do. What the EPA's name is, the Environmental Protection Agency, they have now become the Corporate Pollution Protection Agency. And the only way that we get this to stop happening is by coming together, getting the testing we need done, but in a broader spectrum, coming together and forming a cohesive coalition that just agrees upon just basic tenets of what we need to function as a society, regardless of where you fall, as whether you are libertarian or socialist or Democrat or Republican or conservative or liberal or progressive or woke or anti-woke. It doesn't matter. Do you think that we need to have clean air, clean water, and clean soil as a society? Yes, then okay, then let's make that happen.
Exactly. This is not a partisan issue. This is a human issue. And yes, it's about the strength and the security of our national infrastructure.
And our head of our Ohio EPA is an attorney. That's her background. So that's who's making, a lot of decisions that are a lot like around what's going on.
It seems to me that Norfolk Southern should be covering the costs of pretty much all of this. We keep coming back to government. That's really taxpayers ultimately that end up paying. It should be the company, the corporation that foots the bill for the cleanup, for the testing, for the compensation, for all of it.
Right, but I think at the end of the day, who's going to make them do it? Our government.
Right, that's the government's job. That's where the government comes in.
Right.
They're supposed to hold Norfolk Southern's feet to the fire if Norfolk Southern isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing.
And what about a class action lawsuit of some kind? Have we seen any progress on that front?
I think there's a couple out there. I'm not sure what that would actually, from an average person, what they're going to end up with. I think most of those attorneys are in it to grab a lot of those profits.
Yeah,
what
but they're
about,
out there.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., if you don't mind me asking, I think he just recently came through East Palestine. This case would be right up his alley. He sues corporate polluters and he wins big settlements for people. Have you reached out to Kennedy, or has he reached out to you?
I think Aaron Brockovich is doing something like that. And I'm not knocking people who do that, but all I'm saying, but from my perspective, and I think from the perspective of what we can see from just objective analysis of how things are working, that's just the cost of doing business as far as Norfolk Southern is concerned. To what what you were saying, Rick, I agree. Norfolk Southern should be paying for this, but I think the most efficient way to do that is for the government to pay for it, and then for them to take it all out as a tax from Norfolk Southern because otherwise that's the only efficient. If otherwise we're waiting on Norfolk Southern to do something and the government supposedly being their watchdog, well, that's what they're supposed to be doing right now, and so we can clearly see that's not working. The government needs to
time is of the essence. Time
Right.
is so critical in a
Absolutely.
situation like this, and everyone's just dawdling around, it seems.
Absolutely. And so there are government mechanisms that can be taken care of, and the government needs to step in to handle this, because that's just the mechanisms in place. That's the only way that we are going to actually solve this problem in a timely manner. Then if the government wants to take all of that tab and tax it from Norfolk Southern, I say absolutely do that. In fact, I say investigate the people responsible for this plume, for making the decisions, and then making the decision to cover up these decisions for this plume, for the poisoning, for all this. I say investigate those people for felony poisoning, for felony conspiracy to cover up poisoning, for felony aggravated arson, for felony conspiracy to cover up aggravated arson, and any other criminal charge you can possibly think of these people might be guilty of. I say they should be investigated, indicted, and if found guilty, put in prison for exactly as long as anybody else would be if they were found guilty of aggravated arson that impacted a community of people.
I totally agree. And yet it seems our federal government is far more concerned with indicting a former president who might have paid hush money to a porn star. Priorities, people. Priorities.
Yeah, I'm glad the corporate media is sticking to the big stories.
Right? That's all they're concerned with, too. So I'm glad we're here as the independent media. I know you've had a lot of support. I saw you on Jimmy Dore recently, and I saw you on Indie Left News. Love those guys. And I really want to thank you guys for coming on with us today here in Maverick Land, because we do cover both the United States and Canada. And since this disaster apparently seems to be affecting some Canadians, we felt that it was an important story. I think about 70% of our audience is Canadian. So it was really important for them to hear from you guys. And should they want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Sure. Our Twitter is under Alex's name. It's at United for EP. And then we have a Facebook group. It's United for East Palestine. You can join, send a direct message. We have on both of the group and the Twitter page, we have a donor box linked there. And that donor box is for independent testing. So all of that money is just going directly to those who will be able to, help provide the answers that the residents need. So those would be the two best ways. I think we're united for EP@gmail.com as well, if you wanted to shoot us an email.
Sure, give me that email again, and I'll put it up on the screen for
Sure.
United
for EP.
For EP?
At Gmail. Yep, EP for East Palestine, EP@gmail.com.
And United for EP, that'll take you everywhere. It'll take you to our email, our Twitter, our Instagram, our Facebook page. United for EP, that's how to find us. And also, if you would like to help us get the answers we need to figure out how to get the funding we need to get these questions, we have a donor box that is linked on our Twitter, on our Facebook group, on our Facebook page. $10, $20, $50, $1,000, whatever it is, all of it is going to go straight to getting and supporting these research teams, getting the testing we need to figure out what the actual problem is. And so then from there, we can figure out how to address it.
And I also want to put out a call right now to anybody within the sound of my voice. If you are an attorney specializing in environmental law, please reach out to these people. Please help them. Talking to you, Bobby Kennedy. I know you're out there. Friend of the show. Bobby, you need to reach out to these people. I want to see follow-ups. I want to see environmental lawyers. I want to see lawsuits being filed. If there are any workers out there in the government listening to this program, hey, we need your help. These people seriously need your help. And I'm talking to you. This is something that we must do. And hey, it's an election year. Do something good for the people, and it'll help you when election time comes around. So don't just virtue signal. Looking at you, Donald Trump. Looking at you, Tulsi Gabbard. Don't just show up and say, hey, I'm here for a photo opportunity. Isn't it too bad what happened? And then never call them back. we want some follow-up. We want to see you actually do something.
Yeah, 100%. Nina Turner. I saw Nina Turner posting a lot on Twitter about this. It'd be great for her to come through and actually meet with people and talk to people and find out how to actually help. I think there are a lot of people who maybe potentially do care, but maybe just aren't sure if they'd be welcome. And there are people.
What about our friend Dennis Kucinich? Have you reached out to him? Has he reached out to you?
I don't know.
It's
who
his
that is.
backyard.
No, but we'd love a connect if you have one. An introduction would be awesome. So
I'll work on that.
whoever you know, we would love to hear from them. The more, the more people, the more voices, it all matters. It all counts. Even if you don't have, the $10 to donate to the donor box, a like, a share, a retweet, any of that all helps. The more we can stay relevant, the more we can help people who need us.
Rick, do you have any closing words for the government of Canada? Do you think they're telling their people the truth?
Well, I know that they have been monitoring. I did look that up. So there are, I think Environment Canada, Environment and Climate Change Canada, what they call it here. They do have people looking at it, but probably not adequately. I know that some of the experts at universities in Ontario have also been taking a look at some of this. I had a story up here regarding a chemist at the University of Waterloo who is taking a look. So, yeah, I think that, I'll probably be looking a little bit more at that. But certainly the provincial government and the federal government could be providing some assistance and probably doing some testing on the Canadian side.
What about Doug Ford? Has he said a word about this, the Premier of Ontario?
I don't think so. Not that I've
Interesting.
seen.
Very interesting.
Not that's come to to light. But I'll look it up right now.
You guys probably have heard of Doug Ford. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he seems to be most well known for swallowing a bee at a press conference. Did you see that video? It went viral. He was giving a press conference outdoors and a bee went right down the hatch.
You better believe I'm going to go look it up as soon as we're done here.
It's hilarious. You'll love it.
Yes.
But yeah, most Americans only know him for that. But he is the Premier of Ontario. I just wondered if he had said a word about this thing. Seems like everyone's just trying to pretend it's not happening. These politicians.
It's a common trend. So
yep. And they're just hoping people will forget about it. And that's why I want to have you on the show too, is I want to make sure that people don't forget. This isn't over. It's far from over. In fact, the nightmare is only beginning for the people who live there.
In reality, something like this, I think the health effects won't be seen. The real serious health effects won't be seen for years to come.
That's right.
Yep.
And by the time it is, they won't be able to tie it back to the original cause. And of course, insurance companies will try to deny coverage to people who claim they were injured by that chemical spill. And they'll say, oh, well, we can't prove that it was because of the chemical spill that you have these health problems now. You know the drill. That's what they always do.
That's why we're trying to get this. That's why it's so important to get the testing. That's why what Dr. Galam is doing now. That's why having such a respected medical researcher in the process at the beginning, getting these blood samples to do these tests is so important because it proves the causality.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, great conversation, guys. Thank you for making time for us tonight. Thank you for the information and thank you for all the efforts. And I know you're putting long, long hours into this for free. So I really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Yeah, good work.
It's been a pleasure.
It has.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Yeah, hopefully we can come on soon. Yes. We need independent media to help us stay relevant.
Shout at me anytime. We'd love to have you back on. If you have new developments, we'll report on it.
Awesome.
Sounds good. We'll hold you to that.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to go watch a bee video.
See you later. Enjoy that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care, y'all.
Bye.
Good night. I was about to find. I was trying to find that remix of Doug
Of the
Ford
bee.
swallowing the bee. I never get enough of that. Never gets old.
Oh man. Yeah, well,
Man,
that
oh,
was
man.
good conversation.
Was
Scary
indeed.
stuff, especially for the people living right there.
And just
in the
remember, that
surrounding
could be anybody, anywhere, anytime. Like I said, we've had 4 that I know of major train derailments in the last 30 days or so.
Mhm.
That seems to me an unusually high number, and it seems to be happening all of a sudden. I don't want to get all conspiratorial on you. I'm just saying that's really strange.
Well, you know, I did when this happened and I started hearing reports like that. I did look up the stats, and the
Mhm.
stats are really I would characterize it this way. We're not getting an unusually high number. I think but there are far too many of them, period. Because
Exactly.
the infrastructure is degrading, too many shortcuts are being taken.
Yep.
Companies are just trying to maximize profits and minimize costs. We've seen, evidence of improper or inadequate maintenance. It was a wheel bearing that has been identified as the likely cause of that derailment, which is no doubt because of inadequate maintenance. So that's, I think, at the core of the problem from everything that I've seen, that I've been able to look at as far as evidence or information, statistics.
Right.
And when you get something like that, of course, instantly if there's another incident like that, you get more media attention focused on it because you just had a major derailment. So any other derailments instantly get more attention. It's like when you buy a certain brand of car, you instantly start to see more of that car on the road. If
It's
you know
very
what
true.
if you know what I'm saying.
Now we're
right?
paying attention to something that's actually been going on
Right.
quite frequently.
Yeah,
I think Alex
because now
said
we've got a
something.
big disaster because of it, right?
Right.
Which it should have been something that was dealt with a long time ago and should always be dealt with, but it hasn't been. And now they're paying the ultimate price for it,
Yeah.
which is absolutely wrong. So it has to be addressed. But I do take exception to a lot of this, the clickbait that I'm seeing out there. I don't
Oh yeah,
believe
I've
this
seen
is
it.
a Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, Justin Trudeau conspiracy where they sat around a table and hired a bunch of people to sabotage a train to wipe out the Earth's population. I think it's just
No.
corporations.
Business as usual.
Yeah, that's
is
what
it
that's
is.
exactly right. And it's just business as usual is not good enough.
That's
It's
right.
we need to be taking care of people. And
Absolutely.
unfortunately, no amount of money will bring people back if they pass away from illness.
No.
If,
Or the chronic health issues that they could have for the rest of their lives, or the loss of their beloved pets, or their children developing asthma or other, very even worse chronic illnesses from childhood,
Right.
all caused because of corporate greed and cost cutting corners. I don't want to speculate and say that that's what it is because the investigation isn't complete yet. But from the available evidence that we have, whether anecdotal or analytical, that seems to be what's going on with this.
Yeah, well, there is
this
actual
challenge.
hard evidence that shows that it was a wheel bearing. So it's
Mm.
still under investigation, but they have the temperature readings, the visual evidence of the heat buildup, the fire, which would appear to be a fire, but it's that bearing just being ripped apart, the steel, right? I looked it up and they had temperature readings on that wheel as the wheel bearing was deteriorating, getting higher and higher and higher at each interval.
Yeah.
And by the time they realized what was going on and tried to stop the train, it was too late.
Right.
But more investigation to come. But as a journalist, that's why I get so upset when I see other people out there exploiting the situation and exploiting people just for the sake of clickbait by taking it down a completely, fictitious conspiratorial path, because that doesn't help the people in East Palestine. And in fact, it may hurt them in the end, because then the company can point to other things potentially and say, see, it wasn't us. It wasn't us at all. Somebody sabotaged the train. No, man, it was your freaking fault. You didn't maintain the wheels properly, and the wheels fell off the damn train. Pay up, take care of this, but if you don't have proper information, and if you're not dealing in facts, and if they can point to media accounts that are right.
And some in the media have said that all of this is Russian disinformation. Did you know that?
Oh my God.
Seriously.
Yeah,
if you question what happened in East Palestine, you're doing Putin's bidding, and you're spreading Russian disinformation now.
No, man, you got it.
This is ridiculous.
So what those guys are doing is great, because they are trying to gather actual facts, and they're trying to get actual testing done by actual scientists, experts who can compile the proper data. And then you can take all that into court and get the people the compensation that they need, or they can use that to lobby government to get the action that you need from your elected representatives, which is where the action really needs to be starting right now, to get immediate assistance to people there, to get them the health care they need, the compensation, even the property damage. I mean, what do you do when you've invested your entire life into a mortgage, and now your house, nobody wants to buy it because you live by the railroad tracks?
That's right. Imagine what this is going to do to rentals and the real estate market in that area.
So
who the heck wants to move there now?
Yeah. So those people need help, man.
They do, really, and they need it fast. And I hope that somebody out there within the sound of our voices tonight is in a position to help, whether it's with a donation or pro bono work, anything that you can do. Please don't forget about these people. It could be you next time. Everybody's got a railroad running through their town.
That's right.
Could be anywhere, anytime. Could be you. Could be your family.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Hey, before we go, I wanted to tell you something. This might brighten your day. It's been such a sad subject we were talking about, but I wanted to tell you that you are getting some new fans here at Maverick News. You've probably noticed your numbers are climbing, and I'd like to think I helped with that a little bit. I plug your show a lot on Twitter, where I have a pretty good following, and a lot of folks have been discovering Maverick News here in the last few months, last month or so especially, and they discovered it through I had someone today who's very kindly sent me a $30 donation and said how much they enjoyed the interview that we did with Ambassador Dmitry Polyansky, Russia's ambassador to the UN. They absolutely loved that interview, and they just sent that donation as a way of saying thanks, and said that they'd never heard of Maverick News before until that interview. And because they're interested in all things Russia, they discovered the channel, and now they're watching every single day, and they really enjoy your show when I'm not there, and they like the show when I am here too.
I hope they do when you're here too.
They sent me, I just thought it was really nice. And what this person said really stuck with me. I've been thinking about it all day. They said, you guys are the alternative to the alternative media.
Now, see, there's something I can appreciate.
I thought you'd like that.
Yeah.
If the shoe fits, it fits you very well. We are the alternative to the alternative media.
Welcome to the island of misfit toys.
You've found your place in the world.
That's right.
Welcome, weirdos. Glad to have you.
Oh my. Well, that's good news.
It is. I thought you could use some today.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, that's largely because of your efforts, I have to say. And
Thanks,
bringing
Rick.
some great guests over here, including the folks we had on tonight, and the ambassador, and many others. So
I've got some really interesting people in the pipeline, actually, to come on the show very soon. Can't talk about it yet, but working on it.
Okay. All right. Looking forward to that. Well, folks, I guess that wraps it up for tonight. So let me find the right closer here. I have to get I had so many things.
Are you going to hit the self-destruct button?
The ejection.
This show will self-destruct in 60 seconds.
The eject seat. I'll just shoot out like that.
Beam me up, Scotty. Let's get the hell out of here.
Yeah. Anyway,
I
thank
want
you
off
very
this
much.
planet.
Thank you very much, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do have a special guest tomorrow night as well, Marilyn Klitsky. She's going to be testifying at the upcoming National Citizens Inquiry into the government response to the pandemic on the 30th in Toronto. But she'll be here tomorrow night to share her story about getting the thing in the arm and what it did to her. So an important broadcast tomorrow evening. Please join us for that, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.